Stay easy, guys. See you back later.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We have two mezzos because it just occurred to me that if I'm using that browser source, that both of your accounts would show up. Do you have the stream up? Let me
I just
grab
popped it open and just realized
individual browser source here. That's okay. That's on me. The good thing
extremely
is,
large sticker mezzo in the background.
give me just a second to grab that. We want regular mezzo. Aren't they so cute, Sugar Plum? Thank you,
Hey,
Kasara.
everybody.
We have my friend Mezzo Emrys here today. It is a very Emrys stream. We're talking about world building. Mezzo, do you want to introduce yourself a little? Talk about what you do on your channel. And mods, can I get a shout out, please, to Mezzo?
Oh, apparently I have whatever Wednesday game choice. Hooray! Good thing I can use that right now. Let's see. So I guess main thing is just I do some variety stream stuff. Boop, boop. Okay, here I am. I'm here now.
Yes.
So yeah, I mostly do variety stream stuff. I'm part of Clovercraft. You have probably seen me playing Aria, and may recognize my voice from the Clovercraft streams. What's it called? I handle a lot of the tech stuff on Clovercraft, like doing data pack development and other nonsense. So sometimes I'll be doing funny like development streams. Sometimes I'll be doing just playing games. Sometimes I'll just completely fail to stream for weeks on end other than Clovercraft because I'm very, very busy. So you never quite know, but the main days I try to stream are usually Mezzo Mondays or Wezzo Wednesdays. Occasionally we have Wezzo weekend streams. And so, especially during the Clovercraft off season, I tend to have more time to easily go into the Monday, Wednesday time slots.
Well, thank you for giving up one of your Wednesdays to be here with us. I really appreciate it.
I'm here. This is what I'm using my Wednesday for.
That's fair. That's fair. But welcome to my silly little stream. You've been here before, but now you're here and your voice is here too. So we're talking about world building, and we're both, I don't want to say we're bad at planning, but we were putting together some of the finer details on this an hour ago. But I guess I wanted to lead off with a question, just kind of about what kind of world building you do, whether it's for role-playing games or whether it's for like writing like just general stories. What is your world building experience?
I would say there's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that like the first world building I ever did was like meant for like a video game and had a lot of like direct ripoffs of like Zelda stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then like from there, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of intend for there to be a story that takes place here, but then I just kind of started, fleshing out settings and stuff, and so I would be like, oh yeah, I'll make this one little moment for a role play thing, and then it very quickly evolved into something that was just its own setting, and now it just kind of exists, and ostensibly you could tell stories in it, but right now it is just there. I have it sitting, a whole bunch of random information about it sitting in a Discord channel, and that's it.
So you use Discord to organize your thoughts.
Organize air quotes, but to
to
collect,
contain them. Yeah, to collect
to contain them. There we go. Yeah, that's mostly how, because like a whole lot of my world building stuff was done just like with friends over Discord, just through text chats or whatever. I'd be like, hey, here's this idea I had. We would sit there and go back and forth about different things about it, and then all of a sudden I just end up with, okay, now I have all these details. Let me go put them all in their own little channel.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just gonna let that channel slowly sink lower and lower, and now it's just in a separate category that's just ideas that we'll get around to.
Yep. Yeah, that's so many of my ideas end up falling into that. Like I am a OneNote user. I'm a OneNote slut. But so many things end up falling into my, I'll use this eventually, pile, tab, notebook. It's, I mean, some of them I do. Do you ever find that you actually go back and pull any of those ideas back in, or are they relegated to the one day channel forever?
I feel like there's some concepts that tend to stick around, but like, I don't know, my brain merely produces some kind of amalgamation of thoughts and ideas, and then that's what we have. That's what comes out, and it's there.
Yeah.
So that sometimes I'll dig through older stuff, but a lot of times it's like I don't tend to really forget much about this. I just keep it all written down so that way if I do forget something, it's there. But I tend to describe it as like my brain carousel just keeps all these different things going on it. So usually if I'll pick it up, it ends up being like, oh, hey, it's this one again.
Yeah. No, that's entirely, that makes sense. I wish that I ever used any of mine again. I think that with outlets like Clovercraft, where you have I wouldn't call Clovercraft like super structured, because there's a lot of freedom to kind of do whatever the hell we want. But I think that that's a venue where I felt comfortable exploring parts of my OC, my the elf. I think some of it has to do with like finding the right venue or medium to bring your characters. And it seems, so from talking to you about world building, it seems like and you had said this verbatim, that you'll have an idea for a character, or something will spark inspiration for a character. And then the character informs, the story informs the world. Is that kind of how it works for you?
Sometimes it's just character informs the world, and then maybe there's a story in the future if I get lucky.
Fair enough.
Because like a whole lot of people come into it with like, the story at the beginning or a story in general. I have a distinct tendency to just like make the whole world out and come up with like cool magic systems, and then maybe come up with some like cool locations in it, and then it'll be like, and then here's this one character who's probably important to some story, and I have the character and they do belong in this world, but that's all we've got. That's it. That's what you have.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Do you ever, I guess, when you're building the world, then the world itself, the world that the character exists in, do you characterize the world, or do you kind of just view it as kind of just a force that the characters have to deal with?
Good question. I mean, I think I would say that I do. It is more of a, I don't know. That's a hard one for me.
I know.
Like,
it's,
I don't feel like it neatly settles into like a character kind of thing for me. But like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that is a question that it's an revealing how I shape those thoughts is kind of interesting.
It is, because when I was working on this, like, vaguely, I don't know what genre the story's falling into. I think it's gonna end up being like a basic steampunk action kind of thing.
Good stuff.
But yeah, but I think when I started, I realized as I was drawing the map, because a lot of my world building starts with characters that I get really attached to. And then I think about why logically they would have a reason to have a silly little medallion like they do in the Picru that I made them, because Picru is terrible. I love it, but I have lost so many goddamn hours to Picru. Exactly.
There's a comment that we made to like whenever we were chatting with one friend who's having trouble with like character design and stuff. We literally just said, go play a dress-up game. Just pick one. Just go to Picru, pick something, make your characters in there. That's it. That's how we do it. That's how we design characters. That's 89% of it. And then after that, once you have like your idea of the character, you'll just be like living your life, doing your thing. You'll see some outfit and you go, yeah, this character would wear that, and then you just save it.
Yep, exactly.
That's it. Now you've done it. You've designed a whole character.
Exactly. Well, the elf started out as a Picru. Let me see if I can find my original Picru that I sent to my model parent. It's kind of hilarious how it all came together. But so when I say characterize the world, that was kind of a big like paradigm shift thing for the way that I build stories in general. Because Oni had mentioned the world affects the characters more than the characters affect the world. I kind of disagree. I think that they're, depending on the role that the character plays in the world, if they're, I mean, because you don't read stories about people who aren't interesting. You know, you don't read stories about the boring, the boring side characters. You read stories about people who are going to mar the surface of the moon, or who are gonna, like they're gonna make big impacts.
And if they're not making big impacts, we call those slice of life.
Exactly, yeah. Or you ask why and you improve your story, or you just settle for a slice of life, and that's also fine. But I started viewing, when I was making these maps, when I was seeing why a character, okay, so this character, like, people in their hometown wear a lot of blues and purples because that's the kind of flowers that could dye the fabrics that they had handy, Well, these flowers grow here because of blah, 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 magic reasons, And then I kind of started to realize, like, oh, this world, even though it's not as fun and exciting as this character has trauma and that's why they act this way, the world went through this, thousands of years of erosion. This world went through hundreds of years of war. These country borders have been redrawn so many times that there's this weird little amalgamation of culture, like in this whole belt along the center of the continent. That I think that adds a lot of personality to a world, to a country, to a continent, to a civilization. And when I started viewing it like that, I started to be able to poke holes in my worlds a little bit better and see, like, oh, well, if this was a character, they would need something here. They would seem shallow if they didn't have. And it's a little bit easier to have, well, maybe it's not. I think it's easier to build at least a world with a lot of information about it. Maybe not a deep and fleshed out world, but you can get a lot more information built out about a world than a character. And when I started viewing it like that, I think I got more meaningful design to my world building, if that makes sense. So thinking of it like a character, I don't know. It's an interesting perspective to start thinking of your world as a character that you're people characters, that your actual like your narrators or whoever are interacting with. They're just another character, you just have to give the world personality, like push back against them, because then at the same time as they are affecting the world can affect them right back. Yeah, I don't know, it's just an interesting perspective shift that I had while I was working on this story in particular. So what, I guess, in the world, so are you writing a single thing right now that you're kind of like referencing back with world building, or are you working on a few things?
They all live in my head rent free simultaneously.
Fair enough.
Because it's like right now I've started trying to. I've had a few false starts at writing one story, and now I've reached like a weird point with the story where, like, because I've had so many false starts with it, it's sort of evolved into an extremely weird thing that I no longer know how to write.
Yeah.
And so I know what you mean. Try writing another easier thing. But that one I've been going with a fairly simple thing starting out, not like the full epic fantasy kind of thing, like a lot more of, there's a big city and people go to it and it acts like a big city would in a fantasy story, and I'm just kind of giving it some of those things right now.
Okay.
That's a weird question, Oni. I don't know how to answer your question, because both characters are, one character is written and the other character is evolved, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
Doomslayer is very much so like, they don't tell you much about Doomslayer. They just make little one-off bits about, we have this person who's going through murdering demons all the time, but at the same time, we know a whole lot about him just because of random little tidbits, like, why did he start doing this?
Do now.
Sometimes it's his job. But then also one time they killed his pet bunny, and now he's John Wicking them.
I think that, yeah, I think it was Guts, because Doomslayer, I don't think they went into Doom, from the get-go intending on having this epic sci-fi fantasy backstory for him. They just wanted a guy, like a guy who could kill things.
Like as far as I can tell, the whole point is just, he was just, we want to make it clear that there is a guy in this world that is not just completely generic placeholder, but also all he really do is have gun and do shoot.
That is kind of an interesting. I think I see where Oni's going there, though, where he said, the world affects the characters more than the characters affect the world. I mean, in the case of Doom, literally they had the world and not a lot written for Doomslayer.
Yeah.
So
Doomslayer shows up, kills the demons. There's a whole bunch explaining why the demons are doing what they're doing, why the demons showed up, how all this happened, and then Doomslayer kills them and we move on.
Yeah, and they gave him more to go off of based on the world, and now we have a richer story for it. We have like a richer world for it. I don't know. I'd say. I mean, we know the story is he kills the demons.
Richer world, I think, is a good thing. A richer, like, meta story, because there's a lot of events that are happening to him that all connect together, that do provide this, like, larger story. But at the same time, the story of each game is, and then he killed some demons.
Yup. And that is the rising action, the climax, and the falling action. That's the story.
That's the story.
Whereas Guts, on the other hand, I mean, Berserk's a lot. Berserk is a lot. Just
as somebody who, like, okay, I'm gonna say fairly recently, but also because COVID happened, that could mean it happened 5 years ago, or it could mean it happened like during COVID.
Yeah.
Went and read through all of Berserk again.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to me how, like, at the very beginning, it does have a lot of that same, like, kind of Doomslayer vibe where things are just happening and he kills demons. And then they go, all right, backstory time. And then, like, as soon as we hit that moment, then it's like, oh, okay, now there's an actual story. Now all the pieces are fitting together. Now we have, like, all these one-off things that they mentioned before. And then after that, it's like, okay, now there's a drive to the characters. We understand why these things are. It ends up being, I know, you actually hit a lot more of the storytelling part of it, whereas the intro is just a lot of, and then he kill the demon.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. When he says the point was the Doomslayer is a character that does nothing but affect the world around him, and Guts' story is about how the world around him is affecting him. I think those are both examples, though, of how you can, like, so many. I watch a lot of theory and read a lot of craft books, like writing craft books, and just a lot of writers will publish a book and think they know everything, and they'll say one or the other. They'll say, no, your character has to inform your world, or your world has to inform your character. But I think these are both examples of how either extreme can be successful. I just can't think of anywhere, like, there's a good balance besides Dune, but that's just because I really like Dune. And you know how I feel about Dune.
There's just, you've got one story that's just like, yes, this is my child, and
it's not perfect, and Frank Herbert isn't perfect, and the series isn't great. And I'm really glad they stopped at 3 books, but
it's really funny with that, because I have a friend who is, like, super into the whole series, and has the kind of opinion of being like, yeah, you have a lot of this stuff, and then, like, whenever his son took over and started doing some of the writing, it got a little bit weird. There's some good concepts, but they are just not delivered upon well at all.
No, they're really not. And I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. I reread some of the prequels, the Sun-written prequels. I realized that what it was that was my first, not my first, but it was an early, like, huge, like, universe expanding, like, it was basically my first exposure to, like, the errata of a story, where I was getting, like, I was just getting so much more information about something I already loved, that I was like, yeah, I can forgive this shitty writing. I can gloss over it. And I did. But the thing is, the notes in it, or the concepts in it were great because they were taken from Frank Herbert's notes. They were taken from the original author's notes. And then his son came and messed with them. So it's like, well, the concepts were good, and that's fine. But yeah, Dune isn't perfect. But it does, I think that's a good balance of... Is there a perfect book? I don't know. Is there?
I mean, there unfortunately will not be a perfect book because everyone's needs at the time of reading a book are different. And so you end up with a funny thing where it's like, even if you have like the best written story ever made that is like by whatever rubric you've made the perfect thing.
Yeah. You
then show it to a 6-year-old and the 6-year-old will go, I don't like this one. There's no pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fair. But
see,
like...
I knew I was going to bait someone to bring up Stormlight Archive. But listen, if you drop like one of those books on your toe, you're going to the hospital. I think that's a strike against it, honestly.
By how much physical injury the physical book could cause?
Yeah, exactly. It's not perfect. If I have to carry that thing around, I need to like bring like a support. Like I need to bring a separate walking stick to prop it on whenever I'm walking around.
I don't know. Maybe as I've aged, I've gotten a taste for the finer things, but I don't know. I like hardcover books like a lot more than softcover now. I don't know. I bought the hardcover Berserk actually. Speaking of Berserk, I have 2 of the 3 because they're very expensive. But God, reading manga hardcover, that is the way God intended. It is so nice.
I cannot agree on that one, but that's just because like I don't know. I'm used to the like whenever they're smaller books like that like, oh yeah, these are things that you read like while you're on the bus or something like that. And so having the thick hardcover is not really what I want because I like the way that hardcovers look and feel, and I want them safely on a bookshelf.
Yeah.
And I don't want them in my grubby little hands as I am traveling from place to place, and I will just accept a mass market paperback and let that thing fall apart.
That's fair. When I go to read the hardcover ones, those are very much like I put it up onto the dusty archive desk and I put on my small pince-nez glasses and I light a oil lamp to truly experience this manga, this Chinese cartoon.
You get your bottle of water set up so that way it can the light can filter through it in such a way that it helps brighten up the book and
exactly. Oh no. Clover said M said a French word, get their ass. Listen, we're just as much a French zone as everywhere else, but sometimes you just can't avoid it.
I mean, to be fair, Clovercraft has an intentional French free zone.
Yeah, I know. We say French derogatory. I'm getting the censored French in the chat now. We're also anti-French. I don't really know why it started, but I'm into it.
I mean, have you met a French person? That would do it.
I haven't. I have a friend who moved to France willingly. I sometimes I can still hear her voice. Excuse me.
Clovercraft is a show we do on Tuesday nights. That is a Minecraft roleplay server thing. That there's a big group of us that we all do it together.
It's a lot of fun. Mezzo is part of it, and in chat, Dread Captain Clover is part of it, and I'm part of it, and it's a lot of fun.
Chimera, who just posted there with the one is okay with French people, also part of it.
Yeah, hey Chime. So yeah, wait, one is okay? Why is one French person okay?
I guess the one that just moved over to France, that was your friend who
oh no, that's still not okay. Or... I said they were French.
Oh, okay.
Oh wait, Shrati is French? I didn't know that.
A little bit.
a little French.
Just a little bit.
Just a tad French. So when you're putting details into a world, or I guess when I say world building, I view adding side characters as part of that, you know, like adding important figures. Like in my world, I was actually just scrolling through my my OneNote, because I believe that OneNote is the best office utility ever. And I use it for I use it for writing, and I use it for organizing my stream shit, and it's great. I'm a OneNote simp. But I was looking through my writing notes, and I realized that I don't have like a set like form or you know, like uniform thing that I use to put together like discrete parts of my world, but I do have a tendency to list, this is what the climate is like in this region. These are some notable people who live here. These are some notable historical figures. And, you know, cause like that'll be why something is named, like a landmark is named, or a natural feature. So when it comes to that kind of stuff, when it comes to adding in side characters, when it comes to defining, I don't know, like plants and things that grow in the space, when it comes to teeny tiny details like that, how detailed is too detailed for you?
I usually don't get that tends to not be where I super go in on it. A lot of those I tend to just leave a little bit more open-ended, because like, I don't know, usually what'll happen is it's more along the lines of, the moment that I need something is whenever it appears in the world.
Oh, that's fair.
But the rest of the time, if I don't need it, and like I go through all the trouble to make it, and then I want to change something, then it's like, then it's gone, and it's like I put in all that time and effort to add in some little detailed bit, and like, I don't know, I do think what Clover's saying there's no too detailed in the back end, only too detailed in what you present to whoever is consuming the world.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because like, it's one thing of like, oh yeah, the characters enter this area, now we're going to give them a complete description. Like, you, the reader, have to go through a complete description of the regional climate and everything else about it. It's like, no, you're not going to do that, but you are going to like have in your head, okay, well, there is this stuff here, and so that can help like form what this stuff is. And then you have people like Emrys 3 there in the chat who are like, oh yeah, I want to have that encyclopedia just to go through later.
Yeah.
But I have a distinct tendency to do a lot of, yeah, there's clearly this stuff that's there to some degree, and I will like try to give like broad strokes. Yeah, this is what it's like being in a place, but I tend to not get like super specific on anything unless, you know, it comes up in like the story, like, oh, I want characters to find some kind of ingredients. All right, I need to come up with these ingredients, and I might just like, you know, spitball like this kind of flower, this kind of dwarf nose hair, whatever. And then it's like, well, great, now I've said dwarf nose hair, I've got to figure out why in the world dwarf nose hairs are important, and apparently there are dwarves now. And so it's like stuff like that where it kind of, I then say, okay, well, now that I've said these things exist, I need to go back and actually fill in some of that stuff, because clearly I thought it was a fun idea to have them exist in the first place, and that's why it came up.
But if you have the end, like, not the end destination, but like if you know what you need to have in the story, the dwarf nose hair, for example, I think it's a lot easier to work backwards to try and find the perfect spot in the story, you know, that you've already written, that you've already kind of orchestrated. It's easier to go back and figure out where the dwarf nose hair fits in, rather than being like, I'm going to have dwarves, it doesn't matter how I work them in, but they will be worked in. I think I have a tendency to write that way, and that's why I get so paralyzed when I'm writing sometimes. Because I can't, I have all these minuscule details and nowhere to put them, you know?
Yeah, and like sometimes you end up with the correct place to put them is just in a lore Bible for someone else to read.
Exactly.
One joke I've made with Clover a few times, and I say joke with like the 3 levels of air quotes around it, because it's like, this is a joke, but also it's entirely real. It's like, oh, I've gone through and I've created, you know, this big story, and I've been putting in all these details and all that, at some point I could just like write that all up and publish it on itch.io and get people to pay me for my setting that I've made, and they can
That's
run their RPs in it.
Yeah, okay. I have thought constantly that it's like the way that I tend to write, it's like, fuck, this should just be a tabletop game. This should just be a setting, a world. Like,
Uh-huh.
is there a market for making fake encyclopedias? Fake, like,
It's on
things,
itch.io.
I, the thing is, would mine specifically be entertaining enough? You know, it's those kind of like that self-doubt kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I think more and more about the things that I have fun writing, and it's that kind of thing. But I think, and I've always kind of felt like, well, I could always fall back on making a tabletop game. You know, no big deal, just fuck around and make a tabletop game. But no, like I could always, you know, if I needed to pivot this, I could, you know, pivot it to that or to the itch.io, you know, RP setting. But I think reframing to that whole like only put in what you need. Only, you know, what you need in the story will show up when you need it. The dwarf knows hair kind of thing.
Uh-huh. If your characters are just never going to interact with dwarves, other than now they need to get a dwarf nose hair, all right, now they can interact with dwarves, and you can imply that there's dwarf stuff going on in the background, but your characters don't know or care about it. And now, if you want to write more stuff about dwarf civilization later, you can do that.
You can do that, exactly. And then you have a jumping off point with more pre-built lore, so you're not having to do this all over again. Yeah. So, I guess, do you, when you're actually, you know, like, do you sit down to write, or do you kind of have a spur of the moment, like, I have this great idea, and I'm gonna go until I can't anymore? What's your usual process look like?
Column A, column B.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
It gets kind of weird. A lot of the times, like, I will be out here experiencing some writer's block issues where like I get kind of caught between all of the layers simultaneously of like the world building, character writing, everything at once, and then nothing happens. And whenever that starts happening, it's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm just kind of stuck here for a while. Sometimes I'll like start outlining a plot, and I'll get like 90% of the plot outlined, and I've basically I start appraising it the same way you would appraise a first draft, and then I go, no wait, this is terrible, and I just scrap the whole thing, and then I'm like, okay, but now I'm back at square one. So I don't know. I've had a few different things that I've tried to do. There's one thing I tried to do is like a regular, I'm going to sit down and try to, you know, write so much per day or whatever. And then start like trying to build out a world as a result of just writing whatever I wanted to on the day. Then I've also tried, okay, well, let me try, you know, sit down and work on writing things. But usually I'll hit a point where I'm like, okay, I no longer know what's coming next, and I've unfortunately not included ninjas in my world, so I do not have a good way of having just ninjas attack now, which is, of course, the classic thing that you do whenever you can't figure out what happens next.
Yeah?
Have you never heard that one before?
I don't know that I've heard that one. Will you run me and chat through that?
When you don't know what you want to do, have ninjas attack.
You just have ninjas attack, and do you characterize them as something else? Like, do you, or is it just ninjas?
I mean, more specifically, this was just like in some writer's block tool kind of thing. Someone said, yeah, this is what you do with this kind of writer's block. Here's just what you do. Just say, and then ninjas attacked. Because now all of a sudden you have to say, okay, why did ninjas attack? What happened here?
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that then unfolds from, and then ninjas attacked. And even if you've already used it once, you can just use it a second time, and now it's like, oh, why did the first ninjas attack again? Or why is there a second group of ninjas? You can just keep doing this forever. But, like, I don't know, I'll hit points where I'm like, I don't feel like ninjas attacking is actually appropriate here. But this dooms me because now I don't have any other standby things to get me unlocked.
Yeah.
Cowardice.
Is it cowardice?
That's sometimes not the story I want to write. And, like, there's something to be said about how a lot of my troubles come from. I have a story that I want to write, but I don't know what it is yet. I just know what it's not because of all the times I've tried to make it and failed.
The story knows what it isn't because it knows what it is. Or something like that. No, the story knows what it is because it knows what it isn't.
I'm slowly figuring out what hole it is I'm trying to fill with this story by banging my triangle block against every other hole.
I mean...
It didn't even fit in the square hole, can you believe it?
I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, restarting, though. If you absolutely hate something, like, just scrap it. Just put it in the this'll eventually be used pile channel tab, and then just
whatever your storage method is.
I don't think there's anything like wrong with that. But that's
just
kind of
unfortunate because I keep not actually making things.
But at the same time, like, I don't know, I think that those kind of, without getting too like touchy-feely, but those kind of things, those kind of like, when that does happen, I view that as a, like, well, I learned what not to do with this story, or I learned what wasn't successful for me in this story. I'll either restart it or...
The usual, at the very least, if nothing else, it is practice.
Exactly.
You make 100 things that are terrible behind the scenes before you make the one thing that's good.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess so you talked about like the whole the carousel thing, how you have, you know, a lot of ideas spinning around. Do you have a favorite world that you've built or worked on collaboratively? Like, I mean, you know, even in Clover, or I guess when you think of world building and you think of like your successes, what comes to mind for you?
I've got one that has been titled Second Moon because it's one of the ones where sometimes I will just come up with a good evocative sequence of words that kind of help my brain with like, this is what the mood of the thing is and all that. But then I don't have a good reason that actually ties back to what it is.
Yeah.
And so Second Moon is named like that. I have no idea how the Second Moon actually applies to anything. But it's a world that I'm a big fan of. That's a kind of a Monster Hunter world, I guess, would be a good way to describe it.
Love that game.
That makes use of like crystals and like using light magic kind of stuff, where light passing through crystals changes what it is.
Yeah. And
then I've got a whole, I've got like a list of like, oh yeah, here are the key points of things I like about it, which include things like, hey, there's big monsters running around that make setting up civilization kind of rough. And so the main places where you actually have civilization are in like well-defended or secluded areas. And so then now it's like, okay, well, there's a few of these, and then the people who travel between them are now, you know, a fairly big deal for their ability to go between those places. I am scrolling here to try to find my other bullet points I have here. Yeah, so as a result of that, I'm like, okay, we have this kind of world where you have the monsters that are running around, and also we can have things which, you know, shout outs to Stormlight Archive once again. I'm like, hey, killing the big monster and getting, you know, magic crystal out of the monster is pretty based. And so having like, yeah, the reason that you have like these weird monsters that have their cool fantasy powers, you just go, all right, we have we have crystals inside of them that they are using to cast their magic effectively, and that's just a natural part of what these monsters are doing. And sometimes you might get like fucked up shit, like they've got two different kinds of crystals and now they're weird and causing problems because no one knows how to deal with them. And so we have a lot of that idea. And so then from there I was able to go like, okay, well, you know, you can have your basic human race that's just your bog standard, don't know what else to play human. And I basically said, all right, but elves are already cooler than humans, so we're just going to replace them 100%. And then from there it's like, okay, well, what other unique things could we give some of these races? And as Clover is mentioning, Valkyries are one.
Yeah.
And their deal is that they have like wings that they can fly around on, but you're like, okay, well, if they have wings they can actually fly in, are they huge wings? Because a lot of things try to do that to be realistic. And essentially, what I came up with is the big thing about Valkyries is that they have magic that makes things light. That's all it does.
Okay.
And they like that is what their natural magic does, and they are doing it all the time. Anything that they grab becomes light while they're holding it. So if they pick up a Guts' sword, they could just pick that thing up and swing it around like it's nothing.
Yeah.
No problem whatsoever. But the moment that they let go, it drops and then like just plummets through, breaks your floor, ruins your basement, all that kind of stuff. And so you have you have that concept going on. And so Clover was mentioning some of the cool cities that we have that are like isolated in various ways.
Yeah.
He mentioned like, oh yeah, you have one that's just on a giant sea anemone.
Yeah.
And there's another one that's literally floating in the sky. It's literally floating because you have Valkyries who, as part of their the job of what they do, is literally just hold onto the island to make it float.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant, honestly.
And so they just have to cycle around people, and so you have Clover mentions like because they're always doing the magic and they can't turn it off. Like if they were to grab like a fire crystal, that thing's just going to start exploding into fire immediately.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
And so they end up with like, oh yeah, if they want to wear like heavy armor, or for instance, then they have to like intentionally craft the armor so that way they have like part of the metal of the armor touching their body for it to get channeled through, and things like that. Or having ways that they can like, for instance, if they're swinging a sword, if it's really light, it might not be doing that much to the things they're hitting. So they would need some way that they could like mid swing basically let go of the weapon so it can hit whatever it is with like the full force of their swing, suddenly having weight behind it, and then grab the weapon again so it doesn't just fly out of their hands.
Yeah. Is there a like did you go going back to the too detailed thing, did you go like into the scientific like this is what it means with like this is what it means to have them let go of something, specifically to stipulate like what it would mean if somebody were to be like knocked loose when they were holding the flying or the floating city, or like what it would mean if they were holding an absurdly heavy weapon but if it like grazed their hand again, if it was light again? Like I don't know, did you go into that much detail or was it just kind of hand wave it?
It started out as the hand wave of just kind of like, yeah, it's light. But then as we started, thinking about it, we were like, hey, what about this one weird case? And then started going through. And so, for instance, one of our fun crystals that's extremely simple is salt. Salt, whenever you apply magic to it, makes more salt. That's all it does.
That's all it does.
And so whenever Valkyries have salt, if they eat a lot of salt, or like if they directly touch salt, it's going to just suddenly have a whole bunch of it explode out. Yeah. So it's like, oh yeah, they intentionally have to not eat as much salt, or at least have it be like dissolved in the food, so that way it doesn't just cause immense problems and suddenly kill them.
Yeah, exactly. That's an interesting... Oni asks, what happens to the excess kinetic energy that disappears when a thing is lightened? Is that just like because magic?
That one's magic.
Okay, yeah.
Magic.
Because magic. The magic absorbs it.
That I have to draw of saying the answer is things happen. Like, okay, why is it that whenever you like touch a rock and then like have a little bit of weird light that comes out of your hand, why does it suddenly burst into tons of fire? Or where does the extra salt come from? Magic. It just goes into magic space and comes out of magic space, and we don't... Conservation of mass and momentum and all that kind of stuff is something that belongs in places without magic, but magic solves the problem.
Exactly.
There's some degree of just saying, yeah, no, that's what we're handling here. But yeah, I've also got like in the notes as like other species was like, oh yeah, you have like some beast people where the whole idea of them is that, people started out trying to use some of the magic rocks in order to like get some of the cool big monster aspects to them, and then next thing you know, it's just all right. Now there's just a bunch of cat people around, and we're like, great, cool. Now we've got a place to get mayonnaise from, um, and you also have things like, all right, we've got a cool fantasy land. Why not throw in dragons? Right? Everybody loves a good dragon. Dragons give us that kind of character who, if we give them the magic to be able to like turn into like a human form, uh, now you get to have a fun thing where dragons are the megafauna, but at the same time, they also can transform into like the human forms and actually interact with people, but still represent the same threat level as the megafauna does at all times. So that's going to like shape how people are going to interact with them and stuff like that. Um, and then there's also one species that we call the carbuncles,
Mm-hmm.
which are basically just people who, for whatever reason, have their like have crystals that grow out of them the same way that like it could with some of the big monsters and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They actually have their hometown thing is actually inside of like a giant slime monster,
Mm-hmm.
because the slime dissolves things that aren't crystals, but because they have the crystal growing out of them, they have some degree of protection living inside the slime, and so that's the safe
Oh,
place where they're able to live, that keeps them safe from the other megafauna, is just inside of one that's a slime.
yeah. Huh.
um and so yeah, there's some stuff like that where it's just, some of it is very clearly like, all right, having cat girls and wolf girls and all the other different types of girls and occasionally boys, that very clearly is coming from, all right, I just like those, and so I'm putting them in the world, and we're justifying them afterwards. uh but then you have some of them where like the Valkyries was, yeah, I had like a piece of art of a character, I looked at it and went, yeah, no, I need to figure out how to make this work. And the original Valkyrie art is what spawned the whole thing. Character
Mm-hmm.
was holding a crystal sword, so then I came up with like the whole crystal magic idea. I was like, okay, well, how is this small, wimpy little character swinging around a big sword? Well, Valkyries just make everything light. That's how they fly. And so it's like, it started out with that, and so that's part of the reason why I think they're a little bit more fleshed out than the rest of them are, is because that's where I started from. But at the same time, it's like, we end up with this nice world that all functions together and has a fun time. I don't really have a good plot for it, but I barely even have characters for it, but I have a world, and I could throw together like a tabletop book for it to hand off to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Clover says, if I recall correctly, where you got stuck is that Valkyries and carbuncles are super cool and nothing else is at that level.
True. Really,
Are
honestly, true. Like, we have a whole bunch of like rank and file people, and then
Mhm.
we have, all right, and then here's the cool races that everyone's going to want to play whenever they're actually playing this game.
In those kind of situations, I think giving you there's a couple things you can do. You can truly just have, I don't know, the human farmer, who gets a bonus, like a +2 bonus to strength or whatever, but then like nothing else, like there's some merit. There are people who will play, there are the human fighters of the world. I don't know, I'm sure. Oh, sorry, Sniper, you're
They
one of
do
them.
exist.
Um, um,
See, we have proof. We have proven that human fighters do exist.
um, but I feel like too too many games, too many worlds have an excess of like fantasy races, fantasy classes, um
Hmm.
like too many like RP worlds, I guess. I don't think there's anything wrong with having like, I don't know, it's very improbable that humans evolved the way they did. So for us to further, I say us, for humans to evolve this way, or for whatever Valkyries evolved from or magically evolved from, it's all very improbable.
Hmm.
So, 3 out of however many species exist on your world, isn't out of the question. And especially if those 3 are like the sentient ones that you'd play a character as.
Hmm.
There's also the option of like taking like the classic fantasy races and figuring like if you feel like it's too sparse, taking the classic fantasy races like elves and dwarves and giants and halflings and just figuring out an analog for those in your world, but just knowing like, well, there might be a gap if we don't have, our equivalent of elves or our equivalent of whatever.
Scala, very sorry for breaking kayfabe for a moment there. That's just how it is sometimes.
It is. We're talking about world building. Sometimes that just happens.
World building runs into this weird meta problem whenever you're a character in the world talking about how you built the world.
Yeah.
You end up... kayfabe gets broken sometimes. It's fine.
It does. VTuber kayfabe.
VTuber kayfabe.
I think that during NaNoWriMo, I wrote my VTubers. I started writing my VTubers backstory. And I guess I did kind of do that whole like having a character with a design that I liked. And then working backwards from there. With that, or I guess working forwards from there. But yeah, I forget where I was going with this, but it tied into what we were talking about. The crux of it is I was going back to like writing in fantasy races. I like elves. I mean, in case that wasn't like obvious. But
I mean, I had like an inkling, but like I had no proof or anything.
But I didn't know what to do if I didn't really care about other like I didn't want to make the tensions between races part of the story, or at least the tensions between societies part of the story. I just wanted all the people in my book to be incredibly attractive, and elves are incredibly attractive.
Sometimes you're just like, yeah, everyone here is hot.
Everyone here is hot.
Live with it.
But I think what I ended up, because I haven't looked at my notes for that in a long time, but I feel like there aren't enough worlds that do that it's like this is just elf world, or this is just orc world, and it doesn't really either doesn't go into the other societies, or they just don't exist. Really, we're in just human world if you think about it.
Yeah. But even then we end up with the thing where the humans went out of their way to be like, okay, well, this is this group of humans, this is the French group of humans, and we run into all the same stuff.
That's true.
The difference is that in fantasy they go, okay, well, the pretty ones are us, and the French ones look like orcs.
I desperately need some kind of canon that has French orcs.
So they just show up with baguettes and
yeah, and
baguette swords.
Their silly little accents and oh my gosh. When it comes to do you visualize your world a lot when we talked about like characterizing it, but do you need a lot of like visuals when you're building your world, or do
not
you
so much? I've kind of got some aphantasia going on, honestly.
Yeah.
Really the only time whenever I can get a really good like ability to do visualizing things is whenever I'm falling asleep. Like starting to enter dream mode allows my brain to actually like hit the imagining pictures skill. It's locked the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And so instead I just have like a whole lot of non-visual concepts that are just linked together in my head. I'll joke with people that this is the reason I'm really good at code, is because I don't need a visual thing. I just understand what all the parts are and how they click together.
Yeah.
And so a whole lot of what I've got is, well, here's all the big parts, and like stuff like, oh, the fine details of, well, these flowers grow in this area, these kind of crops can grow in this area. A lot of that stuff starts like getting lost almost because it doesn't fit neatly into the big concepts. Big concept is, oh yeah, well, this is an area that is, the big fertile bread basket of this area. All right, cool. What does that mean? And then I proceed to, say, okay, well, look up what like those kind of areas where a lot of like crops can be grown and all that, like what those are like, put that in there. find some lore reason to justify it if it doesn't make any sense with the way that everything's laid out because of the magic ley line that runs underneath it or whatever. Just make it work. It's fine. It makes the more important part is that the story happens and we can work out the specifics later.
Yeah, that's fair. That's entirely fair. French eats snails. I'm just reading the French slander in chat really quick. Tolkien said he based his orcs on some of the people he interacted with on his trip to Marseille. Really?
I can't believe there's a joke that I like to make about how like whenever you start like certain conversations, you'll make a joke about something and then you're doomed to come back and land on that same joke again. I can't believe that we've come back and landed on Tolkien's same joke about basing orcs on people from Versailles. If that is true.
Wait.
You never know, because sometimes Clover does just say things that are just utter lies. Like he's out here causing the Wikipedia page loops where like you have to do orcs in Middle Earth. Trust me.
Okay,
Yeah,
I need to.
exactly.
If you tell me something with a straight face, I believe in the good in people. My ex had me convinced that bees don't fly in straight lines because he just looked at me in the eyes and said it. Like, now that I know that about Clover, I trust me, I'm taking that into every interaction from here on. Because I don't know.
Because he absolutely knows a whole bunch of random minutia.
Mm-hmm.
Like he has so much knowledge and like a whole bunch of the stuff is true, and he'll be like, yeah, here's this one random fact about this thing you've never heard of before, and if you Googled it, you'd be like, oh yeah, that is true. Why in the world did you know it? But then also he will go out of his way to like Photoshop Wikipedia pages to say that ducks aren't birds. So
Really?
this is we will never let him live the duck event down. Duck moment.
The duck moment. Oh my god. See, I had other like things written out, and I'm enjoying the what's a fancier word for the French French bashing. When it comes to magic, so this is kind of an interesting I mean you clearly enjoy fantasy. When it comes to magic, because I'm still struggling with this.
Mm-hmm.
There's innate, born with it, your birthright gives you, you because you are born this way or because of something natural that you have in you, you can control magic. The alternative to that is learned magic that anybody can take up. It comes with some capital I implications, but
there's just a few different magic systems that I'd actually like jotted down notes for, as well, that was related to this, because I was like, whenever you think about like, okay, how does magic happen in worlds? Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, the three main like in-universe way it happens are magic comes from like inside of you, magic comes from inside someone else, and magic comes from the world is just kind of magic is just kind of around. Mm-hmm. And so like your distinction there of magic like that's special to you versus magic that anyone can learn, mm-hmm. is like I noticed like, oh yeah, all three of those kind of can fit into both those categories as well. We were getting our nice grid put together. Mm-hmm. Where it's like, with that, I don't know, I enjoy like all of them, honestly. I will play with every single one of them. Clover is saying some stuff there of like, oh yeah, start with what you want the magic to do, mm-hmm. and how you want to affect the story, mm-hmm. and then from there, like once you figured out what it does and how it affects the story, then you can start imposing, the rules and limitations on things, mm-hmm. because a magic system does not a story make. Example, Second Moon is mentioned. Got a cool magic system, got a cool way that everything works of like, oh yeah, if someone wants to make like a wand, really that's just a bunch of crystals embedded in a stick in a certain order, so that way whenever it comes out of the last crystal, the spell comes out, and it's great. Oh. But this does not produce a story. It's just a
Yeah.
it's just a set piece that, like, if I came up with a story, then I would have to, figure out how to actually integrate that into that story.
Yeah.
Um,
With magic systems, I've never had. I've done 2 of them, and the most recent one was like a I've been calling it like a script magic. Like it's writing is what makes the magic happen. And it has to do with like the pattern that's written, the quality of the ink that's used. I haven't decided the source of the ink. I thought it was going to be like from a specific type of flower because they're all this country that the folks in my story exist in, has a lot of flowers. Like just a really like, they are, I don't know, they're the Holland of my world or whatever, but they,
very colorful place to live.
yeah, exactly. Oh, and everybody's super gay.
Naturally.
But with the script magic specifically, I like the idea of it being discovered absolutely by accident. Like to the point that you have your base like shapes that are not quite pictograms, but like they're just little scribbles even, if done with the right material, can elicit a magical reaction. And so the earliest scholars of the university that studies and develops this type of magic, the founders of it just started writing shapes in this specialty ink, and it all, some of it worked, a lot of it didn't, and they charted out everything that did, and eventually developed different, I don't want to say like fonts, I don't remember what I called them in my story, but basically like different ways of writing things to subtly affect the output of the magic. And I think that from there, it just naturally would mean that there are some people who have the means and the time to devote to learning, to devote to going to this one university that controls all the magic. Sorry, traffic. They would inherently be better at it because they studied it harder. Oh my God, it's just like real life. Exactly. But yeah, I think that in that kind of scenario, in the one that I've been working on, the reason that the average person couldn't use it is because it can be very dangerous. Like in the wrong hands, if somebody was to have this ink that made the magic happen, and they just dropped it into like the wrong shaped crack in the sidewalk, it's literally the ink can be like poured into like shapes on like carved out shapes on the ground, or lines in the dirt, or scribbles on a page. It's more about, the inspiration came from that episode of Full Metal Alchemist with the big summoning circle. I've always really liked like the idea of magic circles. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with this, but the born versus learned magic. I think that when you have learned magic, I think not by default, I think it's very difficult to not write some kind of like method of policing the magic or limiting it, limiting the way that it's learned. I don't know, I think, because unless it's one of those worlds that everybody uses magic every day. I read a cute webcomic called Crumbs last year, where they made people get licenses to use it, like to use more advanced magic. But I don't know. I think that it's hard to not have some kind of like magic police when anybody can learn the magic.
It makes sense because like a lot of times whenever you think about magic is the equivalent of you just give your character a gun that they are carrying around with them at all times and no one can take the gun away from them. And so then you say, okay, well, why don't you just shoot them? And then you have to come up with a reason for that. And usually the problem with learned magic is that you say, all right, what if you just were able to watch a person shoot a gun and then you could just make a gun? Like just pull one out of the ether and now you also have a gun.
Yeah.
And like that kind of situation of well, then how do you, because like if you're a good person, you're like, okay, well, I'm only going to use the gun on people who I need to shoot in like very specific situations. But then someone who sees you do it and learns how to do it from you might not be the same. They could be out here like, I now have a gun, I will use it to go rob the bank. So it's one of those things where magic tends to be like such a powerful thing in the settings that you need to police it if it's something that, you know, anyone can use, because otherwise everyone will use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. And Clover does bring up an interesting point. The just asking like, what are my goals for the story? Do you want everyone to use little bits always? Magic could be secret to most, could be banned, could be super common, save for some forbidden spells. The way that I'm doing it is I was bitter about J.K. Rowling, because we all are.
True.
But I wanted a magic school story that did not center around the school. And I think it was because I had just graduated from college when I started writing it. So I was like, no, I want like magic post-grad. Like I want what the mages are doing after they get their education rather. But the way I ended up making it work in my in the story that I'm working on actively is that students who want to learn magic, it's probably going to be more accessible. Like magic or learning magic probably won't be like prohibitively expensive, but you will basically have to devote your whole rest of your life to the university, as kind of like payment for them giving you kind of a cushy life, because magic is a vocation, where you're kind of expected to do some work for the university for like the first decade out of graduating. You're sent out to a town, to kind of act like their, school teacher / carpenter / whatever magic could solve in their town. Because part of the
real academic way of things, instead of like the modern colleges being like, oh yeah, you've gotten out of college, now we're just going to throw you into the workforce the way that we used to throw you into the workforce out of high school, but now we're just going to make you have to go into debt first.
Yes.
Instead it's like, oh yeah, the old-timey thing of you go into academia to do academia things, and then whenever you go out of academia, now the important thing is you're using your academia stuff in a way that no one else can. Exactly.
And it brings an interesting like level of I don't want to say classism, but I love writing strife into my stories. But there are some towns that are just
strife is what stories are.
There are some towns that are just too small to have their own town mage. But most settlements of over 100 people will have one person that like teaches all the kids how to like read and write and shit. And if they'll be able to use magic to mend, like minor bone breaks and that kind of thing. But they go and they do anything that magic like would need to have done, in those towns for about like 10 years. Every 10 years, there's a big convening of all of the mages that, it's a means of controlling them. There's a big, they all convene back at the university. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to go a little further. Sorry to vamp up my story, Mezzo. Thank you for sitting here and listening. Thank you for sitting here and listening to me do this.
Half of it,
so part of the reason, the story, thinking about how to start this. My inspiration for the story in like the story, not just like the magic system, was impending climate dread. So I was like, well, what would happen if the world ended like on a cyclical pattern? Like if every 200 years, every 300 years, the world reset, and all like technology, all advances that we had made in the last however many years, just fucking reset. And that's what happens every 300 years in this world. there's some kind of cataclysm. I'm not sure what it's going to be. I'm kind of going with like the whole biblical like floods and locusts and maybe some meteors. But that's not important. What matters is there is an apocalypse that everyone has to that everyone kind of prepares for. But after, in a world without phones and internet and that kind of thing, where pretty much print media is about as advanced as they get. Scorched, I'm getting to that. Some people, a not insignificant number of people, don't believe that the apocalypse is going to happen. The university knows, because they have concrete evidence. The most people believe and can kind of like see the writing on the wall because they believe in global warming. I mean, the apocalypse. So they know to prepare for it. But Scorch, to your point, some knowledge is retained. Part of the reason, as I developed this more, part of the reason that I think the world is going to end is because the use of magic angered the gods or something like that. I've started to characterize some gods in the story. You know, Mezzo, I think I did. I didn't think that gods were going to be a thing that I was going to use, and then I needed them, and so I pulled them in, and now I'm going back and writing them. You know what? I absolutely did do that. Sorry, that was an interesting realization that I had just now. But anyway, so the use of magic angers the gods, and advanced technology angers them too. And that's why like people are advised to like, hey, if you have books that aren't like mundane and your books that are not mundane in your house, so anything that remotely mentions the existence of magic in the world, if you have anything more complicated than like a pulley system as far as technology goes, you know, like your wells will probably be fine, and that's about it. Like they don't really have vehicles, even though like with their magic they 100% could make efficient vehicles, and they do. There's a reason it's steampunk, is because the magic is able to enhance physical properties of things. So if magitech in order to exactly
go over either threshold,
precisely. So things. What I was thinking of specifically was like, oh, we can enhance these water pipes so that they aren't going to rust as fast, or we can keep this like oil in this system going so that like the lubricants don't like wear down as fast, and you can filter them easier. So that it enhances it so that things are way more efficient than they could possibly be otherwise. And that's why I think like a 300-year time frame, especially if the people who have the knowledge are surviving every 300 years. The thing is, not everybody does, because classism. Not everybody can fit into these shelters that, of course, the university and the government have the monopoly on. And there's
the people with the power maintain their power after a big cataclysm.
Exactly. Well, and it's always been a scramble. I think I've worked on kind of like a rough timeline of like how the world's been shaped based on who rose after the apocalypse, who rose first. There's kind of three main players. There's the government, there's the university, and then there's a third group. Who was my third group? I think it was a merchant group that ended up like taking the role of the government, and now the lines are so blurred that it's just like whoever the third group ends up being at that particular cycle. But yeah, I have to take meds. Where was I going with this? Come on, brain. Oh, so when it comes to the story itself, like where I'm writing, of course it's going to be like years away, like less than 2 years away from the next apocalypse. Like they've finally figured out, like, I think it's going to start with that convening of all of the mages at the university, and they're going to be like, listen, we recalculated, we are much closer to the apocalypse than we thought, because of course, you know, like without super precise instruments, or without, you know, with instruments that you have to recalibrate them every 300 years, and it's all sensitive. I just bashed my microphone. It's all sensitive magic stuff. A lot of this stuff will just be off. It's not a perfect science, it's magic. So they convene at the beginning of the story. These thousands of mages all realize like, oh fuck, it's happening in 2 years. Better scramble to get these shelters figured out. Part of a big like development in the world, going back to characterizing the world itself, is that the apocalypse used to affect everyone. And a war a couple of cycles ago, these 300-year cycles, war a couple of cycles ago was ended because the country that houses the university promised, hey, stop attacking us and we will contain the apocalypse to just our country, right? And the university was able to do that the very next cycle, but they don't have time this cycle. They are coming up on 2 years from now. There's no way that they're going to be able to get the magic barriers up that they need to contain it. Basically they need to, to fight God. And that's kind of where the story opens. Thank you for letting me ramble. I'm very excited about the story.
We love stories. Listen, that's what this is all about. One thing I do want to go back to was whenever you mentioned the script system.
Yes.
And how you got like the idea from
FMA.
From FMA.
Yeah.
Clover had a similar idea, which led to you've got me being programmer by trade over here.
Yeah.
Led to a similar kind of thing where you're like, oh yeah, well having world as programming kind of thing. And so we ended up coming up with this magic system for this world, which we have. It's got the cool title of Land of the Missing God.
Yeah, that is a cool freaking title.
Yeah, it already gets you excited. Like you're like, oh man, why is God missing? But the basic idea of this thing is it's like, oh yeah, everything is kind of built on this magic code, and so like you have words in some kind of God tongue. That can directly affect things, and so you have people figuring out things like, oh yeah, the what's it called? If we draw these certain symbols, those are actually these God words, like this divine language.
Yeah,
and so we can start writing things in this divine language in order to make things happen in various ways.
Yeah,
and so we had a lot of fun coming up with stuff like that, because now that we have the existence of this divine language, now it's easy to say like, okay, well, stuff like people's souls and having like true names and stuff like that you run into in other things.
Yeah,
it's easy to justify that because it's like, oh yeah, every person's soul has whatever their true name is in this divine script in some form. And that's like, if you have some way of affecting their true name, then you could magically affect that person.
I like that.
And so you end up with some things. We also were like, oh yeah, you have some people who, because they just have like single word true names, those people just have a mastery over whatever their word is. And so you end up with we called them witches, and it's like, oh yeah, you have like a witch whose power is bubble. Anything bubble related, as long as you can make sure it's bubble, then you can be like, yep, all right, cool. It's this character is out here obviously making bubbles and stuff like that. But then you could also have character like I'm obviously setting up for a specific joke here. Where the archetypal witches that kind of show off a good example of like a wide variety of what witches can do are double, bubble, and trouble.
Yeah.
From Double, Bubble, Toil, and Trouble. That thing.
Yep.
And so you have like double is like, oh yeah, well they can make doubles of things, very obvious, or like can double the effect of something. You have Trouble, who causes problems on purpose. And so you end up with this wide variety of different things where it's like the characters have just because they have just these one word true names, they get this weird selection of spells. Meanwhile, you have things like our Fae, for instance. We set it up to where I will admit we did get a little bit of idea from Epithet Erased, but also I think we had come up with it like around the same time, and so I feel like it was a decently like happenstance, like, oh yeah, this makes sense to have happen. But I think we came up with it before we saw Epithet Erased, and we saw Epithet Erased, and we're like, there it is, it's so cool, isn't it? So we had, we were also able to make it so, like, the Fae, all Fae have, a name that is specifically chosen when they're created. And so because they're specifically chosen and given these names, the fairy queen who is in charge of all that has got like a certain degree of control over them, and so knowing a fairy's true name gives you a certain degree of like ability to manipulate them, etc., etc. And then we have some other stuff like the Fae will like kind of go a little bit crazy sometimes about whatever their name is. So like if their name is like about like collecting or like protecting things, they might end up being like weirdly trying to like take an exact snapshot of the entire world and save it because they want to like protect that one moment in time. And so they're like trying to freeze the entire world or something, and so the protagonists have to stop them because they're up to nonsense. And so the Faes have a desire and the power, like they usually have some powers that connect with their desires, and both of those things come from whatever their name is.
Okay.
A big part of it is that with our lore, humans were basically created last, and like the god had like iterated on creating humans several times, and those iterations making their way to humans ended up with things like the Fae, where the Fae are like they have sort of free will, but they're also really bound by whatever their random names are, whereas humans mostly aren't. But then there's this one bug that happens with humans if they only have the one word, and so lots of concepts like that. So it's all very, very fun, and
I love it.
Extremely happy with it because of how everything just fits together so well, just based off this concept of, yes, there's this divine language and the world just runs on that divine language. Also, I'm being informed that I need to mention crows. Crows have souls. Most animals do not have souls. All crows are witches. They all have one word things, so they all just can use magic based on whatever their word is. They just live their own lives and cause problems for everyone else. Like, I love imagine it. Like they have the intelligence level of people. They can do things, but also they're like, we've decided to come raid your town and are going to demand you give us tributes of shiny things. But also they don't talk, they just make crow sounds because they're just crows.
I like that.
We do have a concept of like, okay, some animals due to bugs end up with having like some amount of soul. And because the animal has a soul, weird things happen because that's not normal. Like if the animal dies too close to a person, then that soul bit can try to hide inside the person, and then you end up with werefolk. And so, we've got a lot of fun bits that all click together that we are very, very happy with.
Yeah, those are great. If a witch gets an animal soul to become a familiar to the witch. Oh, I like it. I like the indentured, not indentured. I like the less willing familiars because they always end up being the Salems of the. That's beautiful.
But before we get too far, we should hydrate.
Yes, and the posture check. So we're gonna start by unbisexualing ourselves. Sit up straight. Mezzo, how are you sitting? Are you sitting?
I was shifting around in my chair slightly. I've shifted a few times, but I end up in a weird state where I don't want to shift too much because you can probably hear my chair squeaking a little bit. I'm not sure if it's coming through Discord. It's
a
always
little.
50-50
It's fine.
on that. And so it's like I don't want to have chair creak constantly, so...
You're fine. Don't even worry about it. Okay. And then we got a hydrate or dihydrate. Now, we're probably going to get at least one more during this stream. And generally, when I have someone on stream with me, I make them say it. So I'll say it first so you can hear it. I won't even say it that fast, I promise. You have the script? Then I'm going to make you say it. Then say it.
All right, hydrate or dihydrate. Everybody take a big drink of water, and if you don't have water, go fill yours up, because when I drink, we all drink. Today, 1 second. Big Papa Frog is our reason for drinking.
I'm
I had to chill.
impressed. I'm impressed. Missing God also does have a cyclical nature to it, where those studying magic really get close to rivaling the archangels, so the angels wipe them all out and make them start from scratch. I know, there's something about... Yeah, my chat's very impressed. Give Mezzo all of your clapping emojis.
I mean, give Clover them and Shine. Like, the three of us basically have been working on this thing for, like, years at this point. Like,
yeah,
the way that we all met each other in the first... Like, we met each other and playing D&D, and then started talking about this thing not too long after, and now we have this huge project of writing. Clover's been working on a school story for a while that takes place in there, and so we've it's our baby.
No, I love that, like, big, like, spanning project, especially like with friends. Like, that's, I don't know. I'm not afraid to tell my friends when they're being dumb. So, like, so I guess that's an interesting, like, making a world collaboratively. We'll start with the hard part. What are the challenges? What are the unique challenges? And chat sound off as well.
Different things. That's the number one thing. Because, like, I remember whenever we started, like, Chime had an idea and started out with that idea, and then we came up with the whole, like, code magic system, and Chime was like, don't really like that, so I'm gonna keep my, like, this chunk of ideas that I had and work on my own separate thing. But then Clover and I were like, okay, but we really love this, and so we kept, developing that, and Chime was like, okay, I will still, contribute to it. We're not talking about the same project anymore as we were at the beginning, though.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of grew from there. Then as it started developing more and more, we started, getting more concrete stuff. Yeah, and back at the beginning, you had a lot of concepts that, like, where Chime would be like, oh yeah, it's like in this one piece of obscure manga, and I was the only person in the world who would understand that. And so I'm like, oh yeah, so here's an explanation of what this actually means. And I was translator for a while until they learned to speak each other's language.
I think that is like having three people around, like, you have a good you've got one person running interference.
Yeah, I did a good job at that. There was a joke I would always make of, it's an important part of me being Mezzo is that I can just go in the middle of two people that are just talking completely different directions and make it stick together.
That's funny. So I guess, the challenges, like, getting attached, not getting attached, but, having those conflicting ideas or wanting to take it in a different direction. What are the upsides to it then? Like, how, if you had to sell somebody on doing this method of world building?
I mean, even if you're having conflicting ideas, like, a lot of people I know tend to have, like, this idea of, like, oh, well, my thing didn't make it in. Guess it's just garbage now. Yeah. And no, you just put it in, as Clover puts it, the idea grinder. We had a particular... we have a fun set of channel names in our writing server, where we have the drawing board, which features the scratch pad and the chalk zone. The scratch pad is where we just put down random idea bits, so that way we can go back over them later and be like, oh man, look at this. That was a good idea. Let's reuse that. Chalk zone is where we actually put pictures of things, or, like, whenever we get drawings, we just go, oh wow, this is a cool idea. We're just going to save the picture here, and it's there for later now. But yeah, a lot of times you have... you would have things where it's like, as Clover says, sometimes it's just... because you're all getting different experiences, you'll have one person sitting there going, yeah, I have no idea what to do from here, and the next person goes, okay, but what if you just, like, did this one thing, like, did this, and the other person is just like, what? I didn't even think of that. It's like, I thought it was the most obvious thing ever, but we all have different life experiences, so it's really nice to get those different viewpoints.
Yeah, I like that a lot. No, there are... I don't think I'm that territorial over my writing. I just don't know that I could, like, No, maybe I am that territorial. No, I don't think I am. I would have to think about that because, like, I think about all the freedom that I like having it.
Yeah.
But it's got to be. You make it sound like fun. I think you have to like be, know how a person is and be friends with them. But you really, you probably learn a lot about the way that their minds work, though, right?
Yeah, you definitely do. It's a good way of getting like, okay, this is the kind of things that like they tend to go towards. These are the kind of ideas they like, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of that stuff that tends to just work out pretty nicely. Mm-hmm. And so then all of a sudden you get like you get things where it's like someone says, oh yeah, we have things of for instance, in Missing God we have like demons that are attacking because we've got angels, we've got demons, of course, got to have both of them there for that good dichotomy. And it's like, okay, well, demons are basically just mindless monsters, so if we want to have something that's not a mindless monster, what do? Okay, so then we end up making devils. Mm-hmm. And so now all of a sudden we've got like this unholy race, and now we've got to figure out all the lore that goes with them. And so we all just start dropping different ideas into the pool and trying to go, okay, well, would this work? Like you normally have this idea of like the Faustian bargains where you make a deal with the devil. Okay, how do you make deals with devils then? And so then all of a sudden we come up with this whole set of like lore about how like devils have like all the deals that they've made inscribed on their horns in the divine language, and the more deals they make, the bigger their horns get.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot.
And so yeah, we end up with a whole bunch of these like different individual ideas that start coming together, and just one person will think of something and all of a sudden it all just everybody's like, oh yeah, this part clicks together with that part, this part goes with this, someone else goes, okay, but how does that click into this, and then everyone just hops on that, and so it ends up being a real fun way of doing it. But yeah, there is the downside of sometimes you're like, I'm not so sure about this thing that this person's saying, and sometimes it does help to just have like someone say like, okay, either we just don't like it or it needs to go back into the oven for a little bit and cook a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And because like Scorched Ice is saying, if you have an idea that is just your baby, that you're like, this needs to be in here, and another person is like, that shit sucks, I want it gone, I hate everything about it. Yeah, as Clover says, you argue for days until you figure out a compromise. Usually the answer is, that's what I described as, that one kind of goes back in the oven for a little bit, because usually if you're like, oh, I absolutely love this idea, there's a good nugget in it, and there's a reason the other person doesn't like it. Yeah. And so you have to figure out what it is they actually don't like about it, what it is you like about it, and then, come up with something that removes the parts they don't like, but focuses on the parts you do. Mm-hmm. And so, because usually, like, if you come up with these ideas, there's, like, who knows, that they have so many layers to them. You have things like, okay, there's crystal magic, for instance. Even just going through that with the Second Moon, like, there's so much stuff from there that we had to, like, try to figure out about, like, okay, well, what counts as a crystal? How do these different things work? Is ice a crystal? Can you just cast spells directly through a block of ice? There's a lot of funny stuff that you go through as you're trying to, come up with these compromises for things, and then you end up with lore bits like, yeah, so if you cast magic into salt, you get more salt, and that's all it does.
Yeah.
They're currently chatting, just for some context, about what they're talking about. They're chatting about one of my OCs, because naturally, as with anything, we're like, man, we've made this cool world, we want to play in it. It's fun, it's a cool world, we all made it together. So we get someone to DM, and the other people are gonna make characters in that world, and now we're just gonna make our own, like, we'll just pick a tabletop system, and now we're gonna play it.
Yeah.
And so we had a particular, or my character at the time was one where I was like, I want to play a magical girl, and I want to try doing something with, like, a magical girl. The problem is there's no way that the magical girl, like, fits in the world other than, like, as witches, and we hadn't even made witches at that point.
Yeah.
And so I ended up coming up with this idea of like, okay, you have this character who is actually like a soul stuck in a body that is made like it's basically a kind of golem body made out of runes and stuff. That is like it's a super high tech piece of equipment basically that they've stuck a soul into, and then
like a warforged.
We ended up deciding like, oh yeah, it's actually several different pieces of soul. Because the person, like, they basically had a person die, and they're like, oh, but we need to save this person's skills. So they grabbed some other bits of soul, squished it all together to try and make one full soul's worth of person, and then stuffed that into the golem and went, all right, perfect. Now we can have the person and all their skills still here. The problem is that by sticking all those random bits together, you end up with somebody who's a little bit not quite all there, and is going to those bits are going to merge together weird, and so you end up with like, oh yeah, you have the young girl who remembers going to school with her friends, and you have the professor of runes that like is super skilled at painting and all this kind of stuff, who ends up being also mixed in there and remembers like their big academy university thing. And now you have a whole bunch of like weird stuff, and so it comes together in somebody who kind of thinks they're a magical girl because they don't really understand what they all are. And so then because the way that the golem body reflects the soul ends up becoming a magical girl. But also now anybody who has any ability to like interact with like people's true names is like, this thing is an abomination that is just like the equivalent of like it should be like a demon with garbage file information.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's just clearly a small girl. And so there was some fun lore we had there of, okay, well, how would you result in this not going to shit and terribleness? And so we ended up saying like, oh yeah, what if you just put her through the same process that's used to make Fae? And so we were like, yep, all right, let's do that. And then we also had this concept of Fae being like, whenever they die, instead of just, dying, their soul just basically gets reborn again. And so the same Fae will keep being around for a very long time, but they're, kind of functionally getting reset. And so some Fae are very likely to have like powers that are going to be a huge problem. Like if you have Fae whose like name is constantly explodes, it's going to be a hard thing to have one of them be born that doesn't constantly explode.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, they have a special prison where they put Fae in that can like have them there for like, the one lifetime or multiple lifetimes. And so whenever a Fae is born and they're like, oh, it explodes constantly again, they just take them directly to jail, even though they were just born. And so we have Fae baby jail.
Oh my god!
Off of gay baby jail.
Have I shown you my gay baby jail box?
I have not seen your face.
Okay, keep vamping. I might put an F in front of like I might like.
You might
I might slip it in there. Yeah, let me find my asset here. I just want to put this on stream so you can see that I'm not full of it. This is gay baby jail.
Gay baby jail.
Let me pop the back in there too, just so I can really. Here we go.
There's the whole box. There you go.
Yep. Do you want to be in gay baby jail or do you want to be in horny jail? Or do you want to be in? Do you want to be in the get along box together?
I think that gay baby jails would be a fun place to be in. That's
okay. I'm gonna put you
in Fae baby jail. We named our voice chat Fae baby jail just because it's such a good title.
Oh my god. Oh god. And we got the fucking minute of mayonnaise. Kasara, why? I have a guest. Give me a second. I'm gonna.
I invoked the mayonnaise earlier as well. So
you did. You said its name, and much like Name of the Wind, when you know something's name. I was thinking with the names thing, I very much liked Patrick Rothfuss's Name of the Wind. Fucking phenomenal story, except for the second one got weirdly sexual. And I love smut as much as the next guy. I mean, this one had weird sex in it. Again, I'm into weird sex as much as the next guy. This was weird, even for Emrys.
A weird that was not the kind of weird you're looking for.
Not my brand of weird, but you know what?
Not your
fine.
fetish.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I'm putting myself in horny jail. Let's...
I know, it seems like you weren't that horny.
You're not incorrect. Let's move me up. Why am I... Oh, because I'm locked. Ha ha ha. Come on. Give me the tailor. There we go. Just messing with all kinds of things. What do you consider weird? Don't worry about it, Ivy. Also, the minute of mayonnaise. Yeah, don't worry about it. Oh, the mayo is below the jails. There we go.
Should we? Is that the kind of thing you might mention in the chat, the certain chat afterwards?
What specifically?
Exactly what that weird was from the
yeah, it's it's been a couple years since I've read it. It's the thing. It's just the main character, who I think is I think he's a young adult at that point. He just it goes into like this days long fucking session, and it just gotcha. Is it's just not exactly. It was mostly just in a story that was otherwise really, really good.
You're just you're reading a high fantasy novel, and then halfway through, it's and this is where the hentai starts. And you're
want
what?
High fantasy fucking. I don't want this hentai fucking nonsense. Don't give me that. Get it out of here.
At least gotta explain what spell you're using that makes it work, you know?
Exactly. I want my hentai in one place, and I want my fantasy sex in the other place. They didn't even if I recall correctly, they didn't even work that magic into it. And the magic in Name of the Wind. Exactly. Well, and the magic in Name of the Wind is related to names too, but they don't lean into it as much as I feel like they should. It's more about knowing the nature of something. I don't know. I like yours better, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's understandable.
It's very well thought out. It's making me realize I have some work to do. I don't know. There's stuff I don't that I haven't considered. You know, stuff that I need to. I need to fill in.
That's to some degree that's fine, but also whenever you realize that you've hit the moment where it can't not be filled in anymore, that's when you go, okay, yep, let's fill that in now.
Yeah, exactly. I do leave a lot of it unfinished, but I've tried so many different story outlining methods to try and get some kind of structure for the story, and I don't know if it's a sign that the world needs more work, or that I need to rework the characters, or what it is, but I get to a certain point and I'm just kind of I'm not happy with where this is going, because I know maybe I need to figure out the ending where I want the world to end, the state I want the world to end.
Yeah, a thing,
because I don't know.
I can say that one of my stories that I've rewritten several times, I've reached the problem of I understand exactly what the final conflict is, but I have no idea what the resolution of it should be. Yeah. And what the resolution of it is what the whole story is about.
Yeah.
And so the fact that I cannot, say, okay, and this is where the story is going, what the story is trying to say, just means, okay, now I just kind of had the whole point was character goes on adventure. But it's just character goes on adventure, beats bad guy, and enjoys world tour of all my world building.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah, and if you're okay with that being all that it is, then okay, sure. But the problem is usually you're no, I'm trying to do something because it's a story. There's some kind of good versus evil story here. And so then you have to decide, okay, well then what's my conflict and what is my resolution for this conflict? Yeah. And if you don't have both of those at the beginning, then you run into this problem of, okay, well now what? Because I've completed my my whole conflict here, and I've reached the end, and I don't know what I need it to do anymore.
Yeah. I think, Clover, that's a good point. If you know what your ending is, you know what your goals are, and goals will fuel every other decision. That's very true. Because Sarah also leaves a good point, and kind of more what I'm leaning toward, which is sometimes leaving world building unfinished is good. It'll help you write it out, and it will develop organically. The world will develop organically. I think so. The climax of the story and the falling action. The falling action is going to be very short. I love stories where the climax happens and then like you're kind of still like laying in the afterglow like for the last like 10 pages of the book, and you're still reeling from everything that happened. Like there's some stories that like that falling action takes like a third of the book, and that always bothers me because it's like I just want it to be done at this point. But I think what I might do, okay, so it takes a mage to put up the magical barrier, going back to like what I was how I'm thinking about making the story climax. It takes a mage or 7 or 12 or however many to put up the barriers. Unfortunately, it leaves them very vulnerable to being hit by a fucking meteor or being washed away in a flood. So there need to be a reserve bunch of mages who can put up that. It's similar to how you're keeping the island afloat kind of thing, you know, but there need to be other mages to keep that barrier going. But I'm thinking that I might not establish where the world is, leave it very open-ended. I might not do too much establishing how the world ends up after the cataclysm, after the apocalypse.
The important thing is that everybody does work together in the end, and it doesn't really matter what the exact outcome of that is. Because
I think I'm going to have like a lot of like interweaving conflicts. I mean, there's going to be tension between the university and the government. There's going to be tension between the characters, like romantic tension, because it's a big gay road trip. Is kind of like they have to go to all the different, you know, places in the country so they can show off this amazing world that I've built. This amazing, completely fleshed out world that I've built. They
need to sit there and admire the rhododendrons that are growing only in this town.
Exactly. But I'm wondering if I don't resolve a few of those conflicts at the end, the big ones, you know, have a climax be something that's not the apocalypse. But the thing they knew is coming, like them preparing, basically like everybody pulling each other close and bracing for impact kind of thing, is going to be where it closes. You know, some of the conflicts are done, and if I ever want to write a sequel, I can do that. And if I want to wash my hands of this fucking story, I can do that.
You can be like, all right, I did it, I wrote the story, and then just walk away.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that tying up some of it in a neat little bow and then leaving the rest of it up to speculation and fan fiction is like is kind of where I think that's where I'm headed. But I don't know. I never know where to end it, you know? Kasara says the victory laps come from how well you've built up your characters. If your characters are well developed and your audience has a lot of buy-in, they're going to want to see where they are in 10 years, for example. Emrys, so sequel bait. I'm not sequel baiting is the thing. I'm just not explaining what happens to the world itself. Whether they manage to completely stave off these calamities. Because that is going to be like something that the university like is striving for, is researching new and exciting magic and how to stop them, because they'd prefer to not have the world end every 300 years.
New and exciting ways to kill gods.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of ways it could end. I just need to pick one.
Also, clearly it's been over a minute, and so now it's time for the mayo to go away.
Oh yeah, a minute of mayo usually turns into like 6 minutes of mayo.
Yep.
As you can see, we are still in the jails.
We have to hide it now.
I know, Oni. I know you have the channel points for a minute of mayo again. But you do get to enjoy gay baby jail and horny jail, so. Yeah. I
mean, that's utterly like that is fine to just say that kind of story rubs you the wrong way, because like this is once again in that it really just depends on what the individual person kind of wants out of that story. Some people are gonna like have a story where the important part is that everybody decides to work together at the end, and it doesn't matter how successful it is. It's
Yes.
more important that you reach that point of everyone saying, yes, it's better to put our differences aside so that way we can work together. And like you could, be like, okay, and then because they do it, there's a happy ending. But if you're just saying it's more important that they did it than anything else, then you can write that, and that's fine. It
Yeah.
just won't be everyone's cup of tea, but it'll be yours, and you wrote it.
Exactly. And what matters is that I'm happy with it. Oh, I still have the bongo cat on. I got a small mode redeem. And now I
Yep.
have to now do we yeah, the Gremrus has to be peeking out of the box like this. I love
Hang on.
this.
Can I? Do I have anything for Crimzo?
Crimzo?
Um, I
So
know Chime has done something, but I don't know where those are. Um,
and thank you, Emrys, for the small redeem. We have 4 Emryses in chat. Like, well, not in chat. You and me. And we have Emrys VT, the other elf librarian. And then we have Emrys Farron, the dragon boy. I saw them redeem a thing. But I think sometimes endings can be shrouded in mystery. Ask, don't tell in that vein. Yes, I agree. And the power of friendship and nothing. The thing is, I don't think it's going to necessarily be a power of friendship thing. I think it's going to be... a lot of people are suffering a lot to make this happen. Why is my tracking so fucked up? I think that a lot of it is going to be seeing those initial parts of the calamity and seeing that lives are definitely still going to be lost this time around. They're not going to know whether they were able to stop the cycle. Many people won't live to see whether they stopped it. I'm switching back to big mode just to see if I can fix my mouth movements. But yeah, I like... Yeah, Oni, I agree. Oh, it is my tracking. Something's very wrong. Let's fix vBridger. See why it's being naughty.
but don't worry, I'm still here.
Yeah, Emrys is still here. Mezzo's still here. The first one that came to mind was... I fucking love Cabin in the Woods. I love that movie so goddamn much. It's very, very good. Disconnect.
I mean, I
And
feel
connect.
like most horror movies really are in a sense of like things are worse than they started out just because the whole point of the movie is this is some kind of punishment for being a shithead.
Yeah,
And
I
like
think that's fully
whenever that's what
valid.
it is, it's just like, yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah. No, I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, let's see if it will connect. It will not. Wait, so it's, oh, this is happening in 2 years and we don't know if we can stop it from spreading to the rest of the world, so we're just going to stop. No, it's that, I mean, if you knew that the world was ending and that you could potentially research a way to stop it, wouldn't you? Like, I would.
Wouldn't you stop global warming? I mean, the apocalypse? If you...
Yeah. Critical Role Calamity was another good one. I never got into Critical Role. I feel
Yeah,
like...
unfortunately, I've seen so many people get into it, and I'm just like, yeah, maybe I'll get around to it eventually, but I'm doing other things right now.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot to get into, and I don't know. Okay, I'm restarting the iPhone too, because I'm wondering if that's part of it. Critical Role is just too much content. There is a lot of content with it. I just... Well, I don't know. I got into One Piece when we were in Whole Cake Island, so I fear nothing when it comes to getting into big things like that. Maybe that's
Okay,
just me, though.
Did
Oh
I-
my
did I-
god. Yes, you did. Hang
Yeah, let's
on.
go. Oh, okay. I just need to shrink it a little bit.
Hang on. I'm making her... There we go. I'm gonna move myself over here in just a second. There we go. I had to restart the iPhone to see if that would fix things. So we'll both be moving and bouncing here in a second. There's no corner of my soul I would not turn over to the world for 5 points. Okay. These wonderful mezzos made by Chime. DM her to get your own mezzo. A mezzo of my own. They're very cute. Hang on, I'm moving you. There we go. Oh my god, the phone did need to be restarted. Holy cow, my tracking's gonna look so much better.
Let's go. No idea why your
Oh
phone
my
decided to
gosh.
perish, but
I don't know either, but I'm okay, marginally better. I don't know what it is. I don't know technology, Mezzo.
now you can swap back to gremlin mode.
To small. Calamity is technically a prequel to the whole world that takes place, that the regular Critical Role seasons take place in. Huh. Cool.
Love love the post-apocalyptic world reveal.
Yeah. I just like apocalypses. I mean,
True.
I feel
just end it all. Just fucking end it all.
absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like it's the requisite like trans person has to like New Vegas kind of thing. But I don't know. I like thinking about what's going to happen after humanity and what's going to happen, like what we're going to live through. It's like, it's scary, but this is how I cope, you know? Writing helps me cope with a lot of things.
There's one story that was like my childhood thing I worked on. It started out as like, okay, well here's this world. Basically I had an idea of what the main continent looked like. And I was just like, I love this shape so much. And I gave it a name, and then I'm like, all right, let's start out with some like fantasy stuff. And I put in all the isekai tropes before isekai tropes existed.
Yeah.
Like actually having like a real status menu that you could open up, and like having like menus that you can pop open to cast spells and stuff like that. And then eventually was like, all right, what if we had like a future version of this world that was like, you know, like futuristic cities and stuff. And then I went, hang on, what if I just connect both of those end to end at both ends? And what's happening is that it's going through a cycle of like, it starts out, there's like initial people there. They build up medieval society, have medieval fantasy, build up futuristic magic world fantasy. The shit gets fucked, everything gets destroyed, and then the whole thing starts over again.
Yeah.
And the reason that that they have these like magic things is because there's like some system that's basically in charge of starting and ending it each time. And it's also just the system that's giving everybody magic.
Oh.
So
yeah. From there
that was a fun one. It's not as fleshed out anymore, just because it's like it's been through so many revisions that now I just have, that's the through line, and I can kind of apply it in a lot of different ways. But that's the core bit, and that's the fun part.
Yeah. And Clover says, from there you get a whole lot of bits and bobs from before the apocalypse, ruins, dead man switches, ancient technology, if it was far back enough. Dead man switches where, I mean, it's just a switch or a trigger that activates when somebody dies, right?
Yeah. But then you end up with like, okay, those triggers happened, for instance, or like you show up to a place that like, because the person who was supposed to be in charge died, and it basically didn't know until you showed up. Now all of a sudden it's become a trap where before it just existed.
I like that a lot. Oh, I like that a lot. I can see that being really, really good for a D&D campaign, because it's kind of, I mean, it's a very clear, like, and now we have to stop it kind of thing.
Or else it's like, and now it's trying to kill us, so we need to make our decisions accordingly. Yeah.
Yeah. IRL militaries have tons of ones in place in case a nuke drops, and similar alternatives for magic settings exist, of course. Yeah.
Because, there are things where it's like, oh yeah, if we get, like, the mutually assured destruction thing of, if we get hit by a nuke, we're just going to launch our nukes back at them.
Yeah, pretty much.
And we don't have to have anyone alive to do that. It'll just do it. And so as a result of having something like that, it could be that, like, you just went through your whole apocalypse, and now because some person was like, well, I don't trust anybody, so I'm going to leave some of these traps behind. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, hooray, we did it. We managed to limit the apocalypse, so it's not terrible. Oh no, worse things are now happening because the apocalypse still happened.
So what would a weapon of mass destruction in, like, say any of your magical worlds, Mezzo, what would a weapon of mass destruction look like? A magical one. Also, Sprout, I'm glad we're giving you more ideas. A nuke but magic.
No, I mean, for real, nuke but magic is real. Final Fantasy VI is a good example where literally you just have.
Which one was
what happens
6?
if Final Fantasy VI is the one with Kefka in it.
Kefka, yeah. I always like, which one is 6? Who is the protagonist?
It's always who's the protagonist, but that one I feel like who the antagonist is explains it a whole lot more.
Yes, it does. That's another world building thing. Like, is your story described by your not point of view, but is your story, like, I guess, iconic for the protagonist or the antagonist?
It's very, very usually protagonist, I feel like, and so on the rare occasion that it is antagonist, like with Kefka, it's like that those ones really stick out because it's like, yeah, you have this character who defines the story to a great extent, and it's not even one of the main characters.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, I was just playing through 9, not super recently. I need to get back into it. But what's his face? The one with the slutty little waist.
Yeah, him.
It's not necessarily defined, but he does play a big part.
A phrase to be like, oh yeah, this guy. But also that would be spoilers, I think, so I'm not going to say it.
For what? Spoilers generally don't ruin things for me. Like I'm
just identifying a certain trait about him. That's how I remember him.
Yeah.
Kuja, that's his name.
Kuja, that's right. Yeah. Slutty little waist.
Slutty little waist.
Men and their have you seen how they dress, how he dresses? I automatically want to they them
draw people in that entire game is that, like, they give them the fucking little stick bodies and then like have full clothing on top of them, and it's like it's a style, but damn if Kuja does not have that slutty little waist.
Oh my god, yeah, I'm bringing up my browser capture just for this because I need to show.
We have to let everyone understand how slutty he is.
So slutty. Hang on. Google search. Making sure there's no, like, weird fan art. Okay, so...
I mean, that would also help describe it, though, I think.
Let's bring this way up. Okay, nope, that did the opposite effect. Right there. Let's bring that over.
If you control drag the window, if this is OBS, then that'll crop things.
It will, but this is fine. It's not fine.
Yeah, look at this man. He's fucking out here in his fucking little thong.
Yes. Just look at him. Like, fucking damn.
Like, if there's one thing I could say that's like, yes, I'm a lesbian and I'm not bisexual, it's the fact that I look at Kuja and feel nothing.
You look at Kuja and feel nothing. Yeah, that's fine.
Like,
You're
that's how I know I'm a lesbian, you know?
That's fair. That's entirely fair. Look at it. Look at his weird little legs. Look at his hair. Look at his weird little fucking his cod piece. We gotta hydrate. Hydrate. Everybody take a big drink of water. If you don't have water, go fill yours up because when I drink, we all drink today. Who's our reason for drinking? Vic is our reason for drinking. A thirst aid kit? That's funny, Vic. Oh my god. Listen, don't pay attention to the shoes. What matters is...
Did we miss a hydrate?
Did we? It was a little bit further
Whenever
up.
we did Minute of Mayonnaise, there was a hydrate at the same time.
Oh, oops. Take an extra big sip. SCP has a canon around an apocalypse that occurs because people become unable to die. Yeah, I don't think we read that one on stream. We did for a little while. We were reading SCPs on stream. We were going to on Monday, but then I did cross stitch. But we read. Did we read that one, chat? I know that we read the one with the human cloning. Like that was what happened after everybody dies. Is that it reclones humanity or something? When do I get to show you some of my favorite SCPs on stream? Clover, we will do an SCP stream next week. I pinky promise. We'll do one. And how those work is I usually just sit and read them. And we just experience them together. So a lot of them, like there's so many that I don't know that, like there are probably people who have read all of them. Not me. But... yeah, I like just sharing them with people and discussing them. So I think that, yeah, definitely tune in next week at some point. Keep an eye on the schedule because I want to read SCPs now really bad. SCPs are another really good example of that. You know, I think they've influenced my writing a lot more than I cared to admit. I think... because that's just a wiki, and I get pulled into Wikipedia rabbit holes so easily. I'm a wiki slut.
Consume the lore.
Consume the lore, exactly. And all I want to do is consume the lore, you know? Yeah.
Feast upon it.
Yeah, and I like doing that. I like just reading just like the nitty-gritty and filling in the narrative details with like not codex entries, with like journals, or with the brief little like voice clips that they'll, you know, quote unquote transcribe. Those kind of scripty things are just so cool. I like it a lot. Hello, Dorian. We're discussing world building from Horny Jail, because I'm always horny. And my dear friend Mezzo here is always a gay baby. So, you know.
So true.
So true. So another SCP that is a phenomenon, like 80% of SCP employees simply do not know that Yosemite exists. A side effect of anomalous means to keep it hidden. I like that a lot. I guess in the SCP, so the SCP universes, they're kind of an example of like, I mean, I love reading the tales from those series, or from that site, because I like seeing how people interpret them, like how they, the important things that they pick from each article, you know. If Sniper, thank you so much. I just like seeing what sticks out most to people. And there are some pretty clear ones, like my two favorites are the vending machine, not the vending machine, the coffee machine that gives you any liquid, and the one that can't be communicated through text at all. It can only be done through like simple like pictograms. But I like seeing, and I would kind of hope that if I wrote something that was just detailed enough and then had my own like lore book that goes with it, I would want to see how people, like what's most important to people, like what parts I either clearly spent enough time on, or what parts were the most interesting, you know? I don't know. Half of the entries are some sort of small self-contained mystery. That tells you about a weird set of rules around the object and then slowly explains why those rules are in place. Typing elf sweat into the vending machine, gross. Sometimes you even get to learn why the object is like that. Yes. Give me just a moment. Yeah. Mezzo, are you still with us? Just making sure I haven't lost you. Okay, perfect. Just making sure I didn't lose you.
Sorry. I was while you were talking about SCPs, Chime had done some art, and I was giving Chime the info to post it to your Discord.
Yeah, absolutely. I love seeing things people make. I just love that. I'm literally always down to see your art or talk about your OCs. Like, that's literally it. And actually, Mezzo, I want to dovetail into that. I'm sure you have. So you mentioned that, you know, you start with characters. Tell me about your favorite OC. I must know.
So, by and large, picking favorite OCs is kind of hard. You don't want to play favorites with your babies. Anyway, so Diantha is this half dragon girl. I wanted to make sure I had that joke set up there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the big thing is just that I had this idea for, like, after playing Breath of Fire for the first time, where I was like, yo, this kind of like a dragon child is amazing. Love dragon child that can like use different elemental things. And so then I spent a long time trying to like figure out, you know, what does she even look like? I just know, like, I like this concept of her being a half dragon, and I also had this other concept of her inheriting, like, being like the representative of dragon kind.
Yeah.
from like the whatever like the first great dragon was directly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also not something that she opted into. It was basically that this dragon just went, shit, I'm fucking tired of my life, so I'm just leaving, and you know what, this girl will do. And so she's kind of just thrust into this situation of now all of a sudden she's got dragon powers, and uh, exactly what dragon powers meant changed a couple times. And this is what I was talking about, of like, this is that story where I don't know what it is I'm looking for in the story, but I know a lot of things it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've played out a lot of the story of her like in this thing where it's like, yeah, she gets kind of thrust into this adventure
Mm-hmm.
and is basically kind of dragged along through this whole battle that other people are having,
Mm-hmm.
because she's now somebody incredibly important, and she never decided this, but now because of this importance, like, she has to play this role. And
Mm-hmm.
so then it came up with this weird awkward part of, okay, well, the obvious, like, because the story in mind was, oh, you have a big war that was going on basically between this dragon who's trying to destroy the entire world,
Mm-hmm.
and like this goddess who's trying to preserve it. uh, there we go. Now we don't even need to worry about tracking at all, even though you just got it working.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I just wanted to put this up here because Chime did such an incredible job. Look at it! It's so
she's
cute!
so good with faces.
It's so cute! I'm in love with this! It's very cute, Chime. I love this so goddamn much. Okay, I'm gonna keep this up in like behind us. It's
just floating in the air behind us there.
Yeah. It's a little I've thought for a long time that I need like a presentation screen or something. Because I think
and now you have one. Important Talks Lore.
I do. I need like I need one of those old like rolling cart TVs. That would be hilarious.
All I can think of is the one meme of what would happen if we didn't have the internet, or if the internet went out today, and it's got like a kid ding dong ditching, but he's left a TV playing Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up on it. It's not a VHS intro, it's a DVD. We already have DVD rights.
Yeah, we do. Oh my gosh, I love that. I tried to go for this elf, like my atelier, my fancy little sewing shop aesthetic, and it's just, I'm a mishmash of whatever the fuck I want at the time.
I mean, I love this. Even like if you were to talk about like this sort of meta universe thing, it's like, oh, you have this nice fancy atelier, and like that's the aesthetic of it, but then also you just have like the people that like walk in with their iPhones to take pictures of it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you're like, oh yeah, no, we have the cart TV. We're gonna throw a blanket over it because it doesn't match the rest of things, but trust us, it's fine.
Just ignore the fact that there's this pretty tapestry over this big, like, it's clearly making a noise. You can hear it when you walk in the room, but can you hear when you walk into a room, can you hear like old TVs?
Yes.
Like, okay.
The TV that we used to have, because like I inherited a TV from my aunt whenever she moved to a different house, and she got a new TV, and so then I got her old TV. Yeah. And then whenever I got married, I just brought that TV with me. And it was incredibly jank as a TV. Like it was so bad. And one of the things about it is that if it was not showing anything, like if we had like been playing games and turned off the console and now it's just showing nothing, it looked as black as if it was off. But you could still, I could still hear the noise. And so, like, I would literally walk into the room. It would look like the TV was off. I would walk up, press the power button on the TV, and it would actually turn off. Huh. And I was the only person who was aware of this because I would walk into the room and hear it.
That's exactly where I'm at too. I'm glad that I'm not alone. I've asked a couple people that recently because it's just, my younger sibling has my TV. I can hear it through right outside my bedroom door. There's a vent that goes up into their room through the floor. And it's the same deal. Like, I can hear it from downstairs.
Just stick a sock in that vent, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's the only way they get heat upstairs, so it's kind of like, well, I'll fucking deal with it. I have a soundproof curtain over my door. Yeah, Chime, I want to tell you about that website. Okay, it's, if you ever need just like rain noises, there's like, let me look really quick. This website got me through college. And let's see. Okay, so just the nature noises that are largely rain. I don't know why I tried to highlight it like Excel was going to fucking count how many things were there. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 3, 24 rain noise generators that you can control the different channels. So you can change the high bass, the bass, the low bass, the mids, the treble, and those are all just different raindrop noises. It's amazing. So if you want rain that like evolves and sounds different over time, you just hit the randomize button and make it change every like 2 or 3, 5 minutes. It's fucking heavenly. I love it so much. It's the best. My only beef is that they don't do any kind of licensing for streaming. But yeah, my favorite combination. Sorry, Mezzo. If you like rain noises or noises in the background, I just fucking, it's so good. My favorite combination is tin roof rain and the cafe noise, because it sounds like you're just in a coffee shop with like light chatter and plates clinking and the occasional like espresso machine going off kind of thing. And the tin roof rain.
Know, you do have a coffee shop voice.
Do I?
That's what someone else said in your chat before.
Oh, that's right. I do. Yeah. I don't know really. I'm not 100% what that means still, but it was a very kind compliment. Is that I should own a coffee shop? Is it that I exist in a coffee shop? Is it that I've spent too much time in coffee shops? And
no, so you know how you were just describing how it's like so nice and it feels like you're in a coffee shop?
Yeah.
It's just that, but with a voice.
I have a voice.
Listen to the person's voice and you're like, yeah, no, this person's voice is the kind of voice you would listen to in a coffee shop.
Okay, fair enough. My voice causes spontaneous coffee. I open my mouth and just... I am from Washington. That's pretty much all we have up here is coffee and tall trees. And, what else do we have? Seattle, I guess? And all the weirdness of Seattle. The gum wall. Have you heard about Have you heard about the gum wall in Seattle?
It's have not heard about the gum wall.
It's a wall. You can smell it from a block away. And people put their gum on it. It's horrifying. Let me find it. Gum wall, Seattle.
People live like this.
People live like this. It's okay. Mezzo, I'm gonna put it up on stream. Content warning for this terrible wall. It's not like gross, like looking. It's kind of almost artistic looking, but just content warning for kind of gross. Let me
content warning for a little bit whack.
Content warning for a little bit whack. Yeah, exactly. Let me bring this up above the lovely art before I send this to the Shadow Realm where it belongs. Welcome to the gum wall. This is
like, it's one of those things that's like, oh yeah, this is a tradition, and it shouldn't be.
And it shouldn't be, yes. This is the gum wall. People go to Seattle just to put gum on the wall. CW for kind of bunk shit. You can afford being in the same state as Seattle? Whack. Yeah, barely. Barely. I mean, I live on the east side, which is considerably cheaper. Anything on the west side is so expensive. Sometimes they do they power wash the gum wall ever? Oh god, this part. That's the part that my brother, the first time I went to Seattle with my brother, he got up in there. The smell. The smell. Yeah, it's bad.
I mean, it's gotta just smell like the sugar and also 50 different flavors of gum.
It just kind of smells like people mouths. Oh, hey, here's somebody power washing the gum wall. I just can't imagine like
work
touching it. Oh no! There's a pic. I'm not putting this up on stream. There's a picture of somebody licking the gum wall.
Oh, don't.
I'm not putting that on stream.
Wall. Why would you lick a gum wall?
Who the fuck takes a wedding photo in front of the gum wall? Oh, Christ.
The kind of people that go to the gum wall, I guess.
I guess. ASMR gum squishing. I'd listen to that. I like ASMR mouth noises because I'm fucking revolting. Yeah. From Brutal Moose, and he went there right after they power washed it. It'd be crunchy. How long till it gains sentience? I bet the gum wall's an SCP. Oh no. Gum wall ASMR. Absolutely not. No. But yeah, I like mouth noises
I don't think
ASMR
there is an
because
ASMR that. I think it's just painful.
It is,
that
yeah.
does not cause an ASMR response in a single person, so you cannot call it that.
It is brain just shut off, sorry. Oh, it's against YouTube's TOS. We got a posture check. Unbisexual yourself. Hey Mezzo, how are you sitting? Are you sitting normal?
Straight.
Good.
Not sitting too straight, because apparently, like, if like the way that people did it, like way back when, of like throwing their shoulders back, was actually bad for them.
I imagine, yeah. I don't know. I just kind of sit where it's comfortable and then deal with the consequences later.
I had a problem where whenever I was just a wee little child, I've always been unfortunately tall.
Mm-hmm.
Do not like being tall. I am willing to sell my height to anyone who can figure out how to take it.
I'll take it from you, Mezzo.
If you take
my titties and I'll take your height. How's that sound?
Awesome, perfect trade. If you can figure out how to do it, I will gladly. But yeah, unfortunately, no one's figured that out yet. So I'm still sitting here waiting. I just decided to put out a bounty on it, where if someone figures it out, they just get the height for free. So the what's it called? Because of that, sometimes I would have difficulty sitting in the back seat of a car, because it'd be kind of a tight space.
Yeah.
And so what I would do is I would just like kind of curl up with like my legs, like my knees, on the chair in front of me. And that was like a shrimp version 7. Like maximum over shrimp. I was ball shaped while playing video games in the backseat of the car. The parents would be like, "Stop sticking your knees into our back," and I'm like, "There's no room for me to do otherwise."
Where else do I put them?
And so, yeah, I just kind of ended up in this funny situation there of doing that, and so my posture has been just awful, just the worst. Like my whole life. And so as a result of that, I've been doing conscious effort to stand up straighter, etc., and have better posture.
Yeah.
This has the plus size of whenever I'm wearing floofy clothing, it makes me look smaller, so big pluses there.
And who doesn't love wearing floofy clothing? Like,
I am all about floofy clothing.
Yo, same. I wish I have a couple of I do a lot of J fashion stuff because I, work for an anime convention. I brought out some of my Decora stuff because it's not going to get worn anytime soon. Like, I don't think I'm going to our con this year. I stepped back from the board of directors because it was fucking exhausting. And I think I'm just going to take a break from con, but that means my Decora isn't going to get a chance to like go out until like next year, because I don't go out in public. So I wore it to, I wore it the day that I had a meeting at work. And they got to see me with like hair clips in and like the silly little like yarn extensions I've made and a pink dinosaur shirt. And
listen,
it's
like,
great.
as far as I can tell, like if literally I could just like get you living nearby me in some form or fashion, like the aesthetics would go off the charts, because like you have the ability, like I am too tall to obtain the aesthetics in any other way than having them custom made, unfortunately.
Yeah. I've wanted to test, I know this is kind of like silly off topic, but we're silly and off topic. I want to try tailoring, but like remote. Like I want to try figuring out how to tailor something and then like send it back and forth. I don't know if that's even remotely possible or a good idea, but like I still want to try.
Experiments are real.
I'm DMing you a picture. It's going to be a jump scare, but I want to send you a picture of my my classic Decora outfit. I'm just DMing it to you specifically. It's so fucking cute. The fucking hair clips. I know, isn't it? And it's in front of the Pepe Sylvia cosplay. Somebody wheeled that around KomoriCon 2 years ago.
Amazing.
The whole thing. Do you believe they had to get that piece bonded? Like they had to roll that into the piece bonding room because Komori has enough that they can do like rooms for these things.
Uh-huh.
And they had to roll that on in there, and I'm just surprised they let them in. Like, yeah, it was beautiful. But yeah, so world building.
So world building.
So world building.
This is a world building stream. Remember
It
world
is.
building, chat?
Remember
This is a
world building?
stream. Anyone here ever heard of world building and then you just have the lost panel of arms up in the air?
I
remember vaguely I was talking about Diantha. That's where
yeah. Tell me more. Tell me more about your OCs.
Yeah, the basic problem that I had was just the character was getting dragged around by the plot.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I reached the end, the whole point was like, oh yeah, this character basically gets to make this decision of, does the world get destroyed or not?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, damn, this character has no fucking volition throughout the entire story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have no idea what this character would do.
Mm.
And so, like, as a result of that, there was, like, a long time I basically spent just hemming and hawing at the world and then going, throwing that one in the trash and we'll start over again.
Yeah.
And then, like, there's some more experimentation that came out of that, where, like, I would come up with ideas and then go, okay, let me try that with Diantha.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was, I had been playing Mega Man some and was like, you know, having that kind of, now I've got your power thing, but then also getting the breath of fire kind of, oh yeah, the protagonist can, like, fuse with his allies.
Yeah.
Having those sort of things mixed together where it's like, oh yeah, she can, like, connect with people and do, like, the fusion kind of thing, like how you have the Mega Man Oversoul thing in the later Battle Network games, where Mega Man kind of does, like, a fusion with the other person. And I was like, this is just absolutely based. I love it. I want to do it for Diantha because I had some other characters already made, and I'm like, you know, now I have a whole bunch of designs I can do that are very cool, of, like, Dragon Girl, but also other things. And so, like, her girlfriend is like a brawler paladin, basically. Fire elemental brawler paladin is the best short version I can give. And so then I was like, okay, now you have, like, an actual, like, fire dragon kind of thing going on once they fuse.
Yeah.
But, you know, as a brawler instead of being, you know, just regular dragon. So you have, like, dragon claw gloves and fire elemental stuff. So it's not your normal just, oh, it's a fire breathing dragon. Like, it's one step removed. But I really enjoyed that, and then proceeded to do some other things. One of them was a jester that was a party member. Doing the classic, absolutely funniest possible thing of having a jester bunny rabbit who hides their ears in their hat and goes by Jess.
I love that.
Yeah, and then we had another one of those happen in Clovercraft completely independently, which just goes to show you, if you don't use your good ideas, someone else will on accident.
Yeah.
And so that was a funny one that whenever I realized that had happened, I was like, hey, wait a second. But then it's like, oh, now you have, like, doing that fusion is like, you get, like, a jester dragon girl, which is not something that happens very often, but I really like the aesthetic of it. So I kept that one around in my back pocket. And so, like, the main thing with her is, like, I kind of started this new story about, like, you know, making connections with people as, like, the driving theme. And so that's why, you know, she can make connections with people and then do the cool fusions with them kind of thing. With a big culmination of, you have, like, the final villain, who their whole deal would then be that, like, they basically refuse to care about anyone whatsoever. Like, little things like doesn't bother learning anyone's name at all, doesn't recognize that the heroes are the same people showing up to stop them every time.
Oh my god.
They just are like, they just refuse to pay attention to other people in any way. And they just are, like, out here doing their Xanatos Gambit horseshit and being like, yeah, it doesn't matter if someone stops this part of the plan because of how other parts are set up. So the party is like, oh, we're always one step behind them. but it could be literally anyone, and they would always be one step behind them, and that's the fun part of it all.
Yeah.
And so it's like I kind of came up with that idea there, and then as I was like doing some world building, I was like, all right, cool thing to do would be make this be a post-apocalyptic world where there was basically some kind of big magic nonsense that happened that basically took a normal Earth planet, and then like somebody was like, hey, I should make magic be a real thing, figured out a way to make a technology machine to like pull a... Okay, I don't want to say too much because it'd be Berserk spoilers, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so, like, just change the world to be, like, a lot more magical and stuff. But the problem is no one could decide what they wanted that magic world to be like.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have, like, a whole bunch of different versions of this magic world. And then somebody just goes and activates it with all of them at once.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole world ends up being this, like, chaos of, like... The world itself is plagued by bubbles of chaos magic, basically.
Yeah.
And different, like, you have, like, oh yeah, you live in a safe town where, you know, it's like an ebb in the current where nothing's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, if you, like, walk 10 feet outside your village, one day you go out and you find yourself in a cool underwater area that it looks like you're walking around Atlantica Kingdom Hearts, and then sometimes you walk out and you're like, oh, this is a desert now. Oh, this is a jungle today, huh? And so, like, you have all that going on. And then I was like, you know what would be really funny is if I tied in the previous version of Diantha with this version.
Yeah.
And so I came up with this concept of, like, okay, what kind of decision would she make if she wasn't allowed to be making these decisions the whole time? Well, what if she just decided to not decide? And instead of choosing to destroy the world or whatever, she basically just uses the fact that she's in whatever god domain thing and goes, I'm just going to undo all of this stuff and turn back time.
I love it.
But then the same shit keeps happening. Like, because, you know, you just turn back time. Why would people do things differently the second time?
Yeah.
They don't have that knowledge that time got turned back.
Yeah.
And so with that happening, then you end up with things just keep happening until suddenly, you know, someone figures out what's going on. In this case, it gets to be the goddess that's supposed to be protecting the world. Suddenly she starts getting deja vu, realizes what's going on, and basically gets stuck with, oh yeah, here's all these memories of all of these thousands of past attempts all at once. And it's like, damn, actually, this shit sucks now that I'm having to go through it basically all at once.
Yeah.
And then decides, okay, now I'm going to do something different, and ends up turning things back even further, and is the one who fucks shit up in the first place.
Yeah.
That causes that post-apocalyptic situation. And so now we have, like, okay, we were able to kind of tie together these characters from the different versions of the story, and, you know, kind of have this, okay, now we finally got a world where Diantha gets to decide what she actually wants to do, and what she decides she wants to do is make friends and care about people.
That's...
And so, and the big fun final thing that gets to happen that, like, is the turning point of the big final battle is basically the idea is that, oh yeah, the big evil villain gets control of this magic machine. There's a lot of concepts that I keep repeating. One of them is the world machine, and so that pops up several different times in different projects of mine. And so in this case, it's like the big machine that has magic, like made magic be a thing in the world. And so the world machine, like, you know, if you get power over it, you kind of hit a Kefka situation where, okay, now you get to do whatever the fuck you want. You're the god now. And so it's like, okay, well, how does Diantha fight a god? Well, it's pretty simple. Get to know them, form a connection with them. Whenever you do your connection fusion thing with them doing it unwillingly because you've now forced them to have a connection with you by getting to know them and caring about them. Now you just go, okay, cool. Now I have the god powers and can fix things.
Yeah.
So it's like literally the end thing is by choosing to care about the villain, everything gets saved. So
Yeah.
that's my fun story arc there. It's just actually writing it is scary, and it's a whole lot to write.
I like that kind of thing though. I don't know. It gives me hope. I like stories with themes of, well, I like stories with themes of queerness, and I like stories with themes of community. More and more as I get older. I I like that a lot. Want to work it on stream sometime. Oh, going back to
Oh, yeah, they were talking about artificial flavoring, which is another post-apocalyptic setting that we
yeah.
had. Is again, they're very good.
Mm-hmm.
This one was based on a thing where it's like, oh yeah, the end of the world happens, kind of, but the way the end of the world happens is that, like, a whole bunch of, like, no one has any more food, like crops aren't growing,
Mm-hmm.
so somebody genetically engineers food animals that
Oh,
are like,
like
so instead of
Toriko.
just being like what?
Like Toriko. It's an old manga slash anime that was like Food World basically, like Bug
I will
Snacks. Yeah,
have to read it then.
it's so
But
fucking goofy. It was one of the big three like Shonen Jump ones for a while, and it has your classic like orange clad protagonist, very loud. I'll send you the
I probably would have seen the orange-clad protagonist and immediately have gone, okay, it's Naruto again, and then that's why I didn't read it.
yes, it's
Um,
very good. It's
but
very good.
yeah, the whole idea is like, oh yeah, because you can only get food from animals, and humans are omnivores here. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so now they start like genetically engineering like animals that can do things like be breads and wheats and vegetables and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So now you have a bunch of food animals, and so the whole thing is like, okay, if you want to eat, you have to go hunt these various animals that are now also your carrots and stuff like that. And so you have carrot bunnies, and you have to kill because they'll attack you otherwise, etc., etc., because it's a video game.
Of course.
And then, yeah, they have to stop a cult who's trying to introduce the cursed food group, other people.
Oh my god.
Uh,
Oh my
we
god.
had a fun game dev like system planned for it. Yeah, Viva Pinata, except vegetables and all the different food groups.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your fruits and veggies and breads or grains,
Mm-hmm.
and then we came up with a battle system that used those different things in order to make combos.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you actually do special attacks is by making well-balanced meals.
Among other things, they meet the questing feast battle gods such as Pretzelquaddle and the Floraboros.
Floraboros.
The Floraboros. Oh my fucking god.
So,
those are fantastic.
This questing feast is a questing beast.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh
yeah,
my
so
god.
it's just it's giving us the opportunity to make as many food puns as we want, and it's very fun.
I adore this so much.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute since we've worked on it. We have a bunch of notes. Unfortunately, were you around? Like, were you using Discord back whenever they had like an issue where randomly like channels just stopped working?
When was that?
It was a while back. I could actually find out just by scrolling up directly in the channel that was affected, because one of our channels just no longer could be interacted with.
Oh.
It was
weird.
just a problem that existed. It was in 2020, around April of 2020. It looks like late March.
Weird. About a month after the pandemic started?
Yeah, it's crazy. And so we lost like everything that we had been doing. Then finally Discord fixed whatever the fuck was going on, and now we have it back at least. So it's there again. And we have like all these notes like Pretzelquaddle, Basilisk, Tarascamasu, Unicorn, Bahamut.
Oh my god. Bahamut! These are fucking great. Just to be clear, I love puns so goddamn much.
I know, it's extremely good.
People knock them as like they're the basest form of humor. No, you have to be so quick on your feet to make puns, goddammit.
Yeah, we have quite a bit of stuff, but we got all our notes back finally because of because Discord finally fixed that shit. But it was just, we had a fucking Discord channel that only existed in limbo for a while. And we held on to it because we wanted all the
Absolutely.
data it had, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it took us a while for us to get everything back. And that was, suddenly losing all the stuff as we were working on it was a little bit of an off-putting thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's that one. It's fairly simple in what it looks like, because it looks like, oh yeah, you're just fighting food monsters in Food World. But then you go and you're like, oh, it's actually secretly a post-apocalyptic thing, and the reason everything is like it is was people trying to survive after an apocalypse.
I love that. I love that so much. Something about apocalypse is just they hit correctly.
It's just the sudden changing of things, the fact that things now are so different than they used to be. Like, I feel like there might be something about how, like, among the, like, millennial group especially, we basically went from low tech to high tech in the course of our lives.
Yes.
We went from having VHSs be the premier form of way that you handle everything to iPad babies.
Yeah.
So
in a generation, my younger sibling and I are 12 years apart, and granted, my mom didn't have a cell phone until about 5 years ago, but they were 100%, like, they're in the generation where all of their friends were iPad babies. And then
I had the funny thing of being, like, raised by, like, the people that were, like, half, like, the early millennials, like, because I had a babysitter whenever I was young. It was just like a parent's friend from church, because mom had to get back to work, et cetera, because American, what's it called? Fucking, you had a baby leave, whatever the term for that is. It's dog shit.
Maternity, parental leave?
Maternity leave, that's it.
It's like parental leave now, because, like, paternity leave and all that too, you know?
Yeah, but for the maternal leave, like, it wasn't that long, and so she had to get back to work.
Yeah.
And so I ended up having a babysitter who I basically was just getting kind of raised as the next kid in line. And, like, it's like, oh yeah, you have, like, these, like, 10 and 12-year-olds whenever I'm a baby. And then by the time, like, I'm out here being able to walk and talk, I'm getting the older sibling experience with people I'm not even related to. And so yeah, I joke that that's the real reason I don't have all the only child things, is because I had surrogate siblings for a while.
Yeah.
But I got to, it's really weird being like, oh yeah, whenever I grew up, I listened to like super old books on tape that had accompanying, like, slideshow things with a little, like, lantern slide kind of thing, where it's like the light bulb and you put the slides in, it does a little projector thing. And then I also listened to vinyls as actual, like, they just had a vinyl player. But then also I got to the point where I was like, yeah, I bring my PS2 over to plug into their television to play games on.
Yeah. It's a weird generation that we grew up in. It's very odd.
And so as a result, I feel like some degree of apocalypse kind of also connects in that way. I will note that with Oni, they're saying, I am who I am because of unfettered access to various media, especially in the late thousands and early tens internet.
Yup.
Late thousands and early tens internet was such a different thing than what we have now. That, like, I believe that, like, yeah, that level of internet was honestly probably good for a lot of us, but I would not, like, current internet, I do not want to let a child onto, because literally current internet only exists to produce dopamine and ad views.
Yes, exactly.
That is the two things that exist to do. Whereas, like, whenever I started on the internet, it basically existed to host extremely niche sub-communities where you can, like, oh, I'm going to go find a website for raising Chow in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, and that's how I'm going to meet people on the internet for the first time.
And and it also existed to host porn and gore. those things alone.
Whenever you're, like, a small child, you haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah. I figured it out pretty goddamn quick.
I was what's it called? I suffered from being raised Mormon. So I was like, I will simply raise my hand and turn my head the other way and not look at it. I will simply not do it.
Yeah.
It's very funny because Chime mentioned, like, having that list. I still have the actual board open that
Yeah.
we were like using to organize all of the list of stuff. Like I have all the in progress stuff on hand because I am a noted I hoard old ideas
Hmm.
is the best way to put it. Like literally just hoarding them. I have just whole folders on my computer that are just text documents of one-off ideas.
Yeah.
And I could build them into full things at some point, but it has not happened yet.
Yeah. Let me tell, I'm telling you, OneNote is the best. It's the best program for doing that with. It's changed the way that I write. Like,
part of the issue I had was that whenever I wanted to start using things, it was
Mhm.
like early like iPhone era, whenever they still produced the iTouch.
Mhm.
And so I used an iTouch, and so
Yeah.
I didn't have guaranteed internet access all the time. So I just used a thing that was literally just a text editor and stored all the files to Dropbox, and it has
Mhm.
not changed whatsoever.
I think that's a very uniquely our generation thing too. Having had an iPod Touch and your like slide phone or your flip phone. I had an iPod Touch and a slide phone. That like the keyboard slid up, but it also had a touch screen. Oh, that was so cool. That was the coolest fucking phone ever. But I I think that was a
Shout out to
uniquely our
Blackberries.
generation experience. Having like just the iPod Touch. Oh my god, I had a Sansa clip too, Oni. I fucking loved that thing. I had that. I had an iPod, both kinds of iPod Shuffle. The big one and the little one.
I won one of the little shuffles from some competition.
Yep.
And then I remember like there was like a point in my life whenever I saved up money like real long to get an iPod Nano, and that was like such a big improvement for me. Now it's got a screen. I can see which songs I want to listen to.
Yep.
And then I got the touch and then I moved over to Androids, and that's just been me ever since.
Yeah. I'm looking. I wonder how much a classic iPod costs nowadays. How much do you think you
mean,
buy one for?
The weird part about them is you can't use them without also having somebody get you a classic iTunes.
Yep, which is just wild to me. There are people who
Shoutouts to whenever
want
you could
that
just
shit.
drag files onto your MP3 player and play them.
I know. $40. Get today. Apple iPod Classic Electronics Color Gray. Wow. In box, $899. Jesus Christ.
Collector's version versus hand-me-down version.
Jesus. I played this game on my iPod. I had an iPod Nano as well. I played this game called Song Summoner. I talk about it every time I talk about my iPod because I remember it. It was a Square game that had you imported your songs into the game, the songs that you like had on your iPod, and it would create. It was a tactics game. You would create your units by importing songs. It was so much fun. I think it exists for mobile now. I don't know if it has like Spotify integration or what,
It lists
but
platforms iOS on the wiki page for it. I popped that open because I was like, this sounds interesting.
yeah.
The iPhone edition of Song Summoners doubled the size of the story mode and 50 different unlockable tune troops. They recommended it for people who like tactical strategy games such as Final Fantasy Tactics. They called out the click wheel controls and unique troop generating mechanism, but called the gameplay simplistic.
It was very
They did not
simplistic.
recommend the iPhone version of the game, calling the story childish.
Yes.
And the fact that it still controls the same way as you would play it on the Nano.
Yes, exactly. The scroll wheel iPod Nano control was cool. It would not work today, but back then it was kind of a cool thing, especially because like that haptic feedback was the perfect amount. It made me feel, even though I was just like grazing my finger around the wheel, it really made me feel like I was like clicking a phone, like an old dial phone thing.
Like you know what's going on with it. It's not just like a mystery.
Yes.
It was good feedback.
It really was.
There's a lot of that stuff that is very funny in that category of like, it was so good for the time and limitations it had, but you could not pay me to use that as my primary thing today. Like it is just it's not doable. Yeah. Like we've gotten so much further past it, but I really appreciate this old stuff, and I look back on it fondly, and like it's just got one of those nostalgia things. It's like this, you cannot reclaim the past, but it was definitely cool while it lasted.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly. We are sitting at 2 hours 59, Mezzo. And I need to eat some food and rest. It's been a
Makes
pleasure
sense.
having you.
Yeah, it's been
We
great.
have to do this again. We have
Yeah,
to do this again.
absolutely.
I've had an incredibly good time. I have a couple people that I could raid into, but I want to know because, you know, you're a guest. I want to know if you have anybody you'd like to raid into first. Like,
I had a raid that I thought was going to happen because Clover and Chime were going to be starting up a thing. I thought they were talking about streaming, but I think they got distracted by participating in chat. So that kind of makes things slightly awkward for that plan.
that's okay.
Also, my backup raid plan does not exist right now because I'm currently live on it. So this is really difficult.
Oh no, speaking of raids, Ethanol, thank you for the raid.
Ethan's here. Also, Ethan is also hitting you with the your problem now.
Goodness.
I
Thank
think
you
clearly. Listen, if we can just like stall for just a moment for Chime to get the stream up, we can just have the Clovercraft.
I'm
raid
happy to
continue.
stall.
So how about world building some more? Just like a brief bit. I'm just like glancing at my notes. Oh, you're eating ice cream? Okay, never mind that plan. I don't think we can stall that fast or that long. Since you need to eat, it sounds like.
I need to eat some food.
Yeah. I
but
do
that's
have
okay.
like some files of like, oh yeah, here's like concepts where it's like this implies an entire world, and I can talk about that whole world that exists. But also, it literally is like one little tiny outline, and that's it. That's all I have.
Yeah. Oh no, you're gonna make me yawn.
Yeah, it is. It is 9:30 here. We've got that time difference going on, so it's
yeah.
I'm starting to get that first wave of sleepy hitting me.
Yep. Give me just one moment. CST gang, exactly. Yeah, but so do we want to see if they're gonna start up theirs, or do we want to? Oh, Nixie, thank you for the follow.
Yeah, good question. Chime didn't sound like she was gonna be getting it together very quick, so I don't know. Clover, if you're still here, do you want it? Nope. Clover is sleepy. Gotcha.
Clover's sleepy. Cool. No worries.
Right.
Anybody else you'd like, or I will just.
Nope. I'll hand that one over to you because I do not have
Excellent.
anyone else on my immediate followers list that I can see that.
We have a friend who just, let me make sure they're still on, who raided into us yesterday. They do makers and crafting stuff. They're doing perler beads right now. So we're going to go say hi to Momo Bunny. We're saying hi to another bunny.
Another bunny.
Yes, we like our bunny folk around here. So go say hi to Momo. They may have a different vibe than us.
The years,
so
right?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
1 year solidarity?
Yeah, absolutely. Just because mine are pointed and yours are rounded doesn't mean we can't see eye to eye. No, so go behave yourselves in Momo's chat. Please be sure to read the rules before you interact, because lots of times people we raid into have different vibes from us. But I'll be back again at some point. I don't know, read my schedule. And check out Mezzo. Can I get another shout out to Mezzo, please? Just before we head out. Because they're a delight to have, and I'm really excited to do this again. I'm really excited.
See me like once a week, so it's
yeah, exactly.
You'll see me some more times per week, sometimes weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Mezzo.
Oh, it's as loud as you can shout.
Okay.
There we go.
Shout out.
Alrighty, Mezzo, thanks again for being here. I'm gonna start that raid up, and we'll go into our stream ending screen. But thank you all for being here. It's been a pleasure. I will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.